Hey, we are live. We're live on Facebook and we are live on our Zoom webpage here.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sullivan.
You're welcome.
I will call to order the January 19th, 2022 meeting of the Cohasset School Committee. Would all members present please indicate so in roll call? Mrs. Caleri?
Present.
Mr. Dial?
Present.
Mr. Kearney?
Present.
Mrs. St. Ange?
Present.
And I am present, Craig McClellan. So all members are present as of 6 p.m. This meeting is being held in a hybrid format today. We are back for the first time in nearly 2 years, having our meetings in the within the district itself. And we're very proud to announce that we have shifted our meetings, our regular default meeting location, from the community room, which wasn't as compatible a space as this space is, nor as appropriate, to now we will be regularly meeting in the Learning Commons here in the middle high school. And as you can see, no one is here with us tonight, but we hope people will start to attend in person as people become more comfortable with that. But we wanted to make sure to be here in person tonight, and everyone can still participate virtually using the Q&A feature that we've been using for the last 2 years or so. And I'm sure everyone's comfortable with that. So welcome, everyone. First agenda item is public comment. I usually note, but just for everyone's edification, if you haven't been on a meeting before, this section of the agenda is reserved for comments or points of discussion related to topics that are not already on the agenda. So, for example, if you have a comment relative to the superintendent goals, you would wait until we got to that point in the agenda tonight. Otherwise, if you have a point of discussion that is not related to an agenda item, please utilize the Q&A feature now. There's no one here, so the only people that would be participating here would be someone participating via Zoom. So please utilize that Q&A feature now, and hopefully one of us, maybe Mrs. Caleri, is monitoring that. We'll give everyone a few seconds to do so. We will not, just to reiterate our rule, we won't go back to topics that are not on the agenda after public comment. So this will be the only time for people to make comments that are related to topics that aren't on the agenda. I'm trying to impress that rule upon everyone so we can all get used to that, because it'll help with the flow of these typically fairly long meetings.
And questions have to be asked on Zoom, not on Facebook.
That's right, because we're not going to be monitoring Facebook.
Correct.
So the Q&A feature on Zoom. Every once in a while, someone gets away with text messaging me, but
Okay.
but Q&A on Zoom. Okay, we have one.
It's about masks, though. Do you want to do it now, or do you want to?
Nope, we will wait until so the vaccination threshold discussion is obviously vaccination threshold relates to masking. So that relates to an item, and that may have not been clear to, I said obviously, it's obvious to me because I've been talking about it every day for the last 2 years of my life, but it's not obvious to everyone. The vaccination threshold discussion relates to the 80% threshold to consider whether or not you have a relaxed masking rule in that district, or in that building, excuse me. So we'll wait to address that comment that just came in on masking until that point in the agenda, which is very soon. So unless someone else has a discussion point, we'll be getting to that very shortly. Is that pretty much it? All right, I think we've given enough time while I've been blabbing here. So we'll move right into the superintendent support. And at this time, I turn the meeting over to our superintendent of schools, Dr. Patrick Sullivan. Thank you, Dr. Sullivan.
Thank you very much, Chair McClellan and your school committee. It is wonderful to be here. Hopefully the sound quality is great at home, and bless you, is as good as it was when we tested it. And this is really something that we hope to have at all of our schools. Right now, just as we were at Wilcutt, but so people know, we're being picked up by a device that's called a Poly, which is a camera that it captures the whole room and also captures the sound of the room. This is a great learning tool for us. We're able to use this now for our middle and high school, this particular device. And we're able to, for instance, if we wanted to Zoom with an author or Zoom on a virtual field trip, with a whole classroom being able to participate without having to pass a microphone or, even worse, a small computer around. This is a fabulous learning tool. Our plans right now are to put one of these in all of our main learning centers, so that we'll be able to have that at Osgood and Deer Hill as well. And potentially we'll be able to rotate our school committee meeting when we do a spotlight, for instance. If we're doing a spotlight on Deer Hill, we'll be able to have it at Deer Hill School, invite families in for that, and everybody in the community will be able to see our lovely school. So it's just a great thing. Very excited about it. Very excited to be back in a school setting. It's a wonderful space, but it's nice to be in our schools because that's what we're all about. It's been obviously a challenging couple of weeks. We've had, as everyone knows, we've continued kind of a spurt on the COVID Omicron. It's obviously had effects on everyone. We're working through it. We're hoping that we're moving in a direction. There's some signs we're moving in a direction that will be improving. But we still have great learning happening and great teaching every single day. We had a wonderful learning walk today at our middle school. Our whole leadership team was in every room in the middle school, and it's just fabulous to see the teaching and learning that's happening there. A couple of notes. I know we're going to get into a deeper discussion about the vaccination threshold and the language that came in the recent mask extension that was extended through February 20th. I'll talk about that a little bit. But I did want to mention that we have, this was in my newsletter, but we do have a vaccination clinic that I've been asked to advertise, and I'm happy to, on January 22nd, which is this Saturday, from 1 to 3 at our Deer Hill School. And this is for children 5 to 11 who might be families obviously might be looking to get them their second dose. It's a Pfizer dose. So that is open registration. There's a link on my website, I don't know what to on my newsletter, and there's also a link on the town website. So if people are interested in that, and I am told by the Board of Health that next Wednesday from 4 to 7 at Wilka Commons, there will be an 18+ second shot for those. There'll be a Moderna dose for those who might be interested in that. So I wanted to update folks on that.
Or a booster, maybe?
It's for a booster.
Yeah.
No. I think it's the second.
Only second
I
shot?
think it's the second shot. Yeah, that's what I'm told. Did you hear a booster? 18+?
I don't know, I just
Yeah.
feel like it's timing maybe. There's gonna be-
I'll check on the
It doesn't
second
matter, I
one.
have nothing.
The last one was a booster.
The first one is a boost.
Yeah, the one that already happened, it will go.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay, so I stand corrected. That is 18+, that is a booster. That's a booster, but the other one is the second shot for, I'm told, for the elementary, the 5 to 11-year-olds. That's this Saturday. And then again, next Wednesday, 4 to 7, Wilka for the booster. I also wanted to update the committee and everyone at home on some recent information that was sent by Governor Baker and then was echoed by DESE just yesterday. And today we had a webinar regarding this. And it involves a potential change for any district that wants to sign up for this in our testing program. And up until now, all of you know that, schools have been throughout the Commonwealth and really in other states as well, been engaged in various types of testing, pool testing, symptomatic testing, and test and stay. For us, we've opted to do test and stay. But what they're finding is, and I'll actually going to show you a bit of a presentation in a minute, that nationally and locally, the rates of close contacts based on test and stays that actually turn out to have the COVID-19 are very, very low. And so that paired with the recent surge in Omicron and the clogging up of many systems because of the amount of effort and work and human capital it takes to get the testing done has caused them to stop under Department of Health advisory and pivot their testing plan a bit. So I'm going to share with you, if I may, just a little bit of that presentation that was provided to us, and hopefully you'll be able to see it on your screen in just a second. There we go. Bear with me. I'm just going to go through some highlights here. So anyway, this is just some information that was given to people today in a webinar. It's actually the slideshow from the webinar. I won't go through it all, but it gives you an idea of what we're looking to do. And we do need to have more discussions with our Board of Health. But this is a change, really moving more towards kind of an endemic, the end of the pandemic sort of thought that we need to eventually move to, and this is sort of a step in that direction. So it talks about, this just talks about the strength in our adaptability to meet the needs of our schools based upon current conditions. And they're talking about adapting their program further to optimize in-person learning. So just to move forward with it, again, this is the slideshow that was given by Desi today, and we were permitted to and actually asked to share with our community, so I'm doing just that. Last fall, we initiated test and stay to keep close contacts in school using repeated daily testing. Remember, Massachusetts has really been doing the testing program for 2 years now. We know how much work this was and under how much strain school health staff in particular have been under as they try to keep up with the contact tracing. And this is an important statistic on the third bullet. 4.5 months later, with hundreds of thousands of results from across the state, more than 98% of those tests have been negative. So again, test and stay is designed for in-school close contacts who would otherwise have to quarantine. We, in Cohasset schools, have implemented spacing all year. Until recently at the high school, we reduced it at the permission of the school committee, the blessing of the school committee, because we needed to do school sports. So really, we've been sort of ahead of the curve on that with our spacing. So we haven't had as many needs to do test and stay. We've had a few. We haven't had many. But for the vast majority of schools across the Commonwealth, it's been a massive undertaking. And they've had a lot of data that show that 98% of the tests that they've given out have proved negative. So that's an interesting sign. It's also helpful to look at nationwide data related to test and stay to examine the extent to which secondary transmission is occurring in the schools. And here's some interesting evidence from California and Illinois, cited by the CDC in their test and stay guidance. Secondary transmission rates very, very small, 0.7 to 1.5%. And then test positivity rates and test and stay indicate that individuals identified as close contacts at school are very unlikely to contract or spread
Can I ask a
COVID-19.
question that's like kind of unfair because this is a new presentation?
Yeah.
But this is data that's gathered prior to Omicron, right?
Well, it's data that's gathered. I mean, this was just given today.
Right.
So I haven't really read the footnotes, but I would imagine most of the data comes before Omicron, although Omicron is the dominant, if not
Right.
only present strain.
Yeah, I
right
just
now.
want to,
I mean, maybe we can look at the citations at the end and then we'll have some dates.
Yeah.
And we can take that into consideration.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
I'm not saying
Right.
it to do anything other than clarify it for me. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think, yes, I would imagine. Other states like Connecticut and Vermont have recently transitioned from individualized contact tracing to the use of at-home tests, where this is going, and focusing school health efforts on symptomatic testing. So what they're trying to do, and they're strongly recommending that districts do this, is that they've said anyone participating in symptomatic and/or pool testing, and we are technically participating in symptomatic testing because we have the ability to test folks, particularly if they're close contacts and have symptoms. We have the ability to test folks because we signed up for it under those circumstances. But those folks who are doing that have the ability now, those districts, to discontinue contact tracing and test and stay. Again, this is moving to the next phase of the pandemic. Using their professional discretion, school health officials and professionals rather may determine if specific situations warrant contact tracing. So what that means is that our nurses have the ability to do selective contact tracing if they feel that a particular situation may warrant that. But this whole idea is to get rid of contact tracing, get rid of test and stay, and provide, and I'll get to it in a minute specifically, provide families on a week-by-week basis with test kits to allow them to test. This is totally going to be opt-in, totally voluntary, but allow them to test their own children at home and to inform us if indeed their child has tested positive, and also the same with staff. So the idea is that it's more of now a transition from the test and stay towards dealing with symptomatic individuals and really trying to focus on in-person learning as opposed to trying to clog up everything with what seemingly could be endless Omicron-specific test and stay scenarios. Okay, so that's it. As an additional resource, districts and schools that elect to make this change will be provided with rapid antigen at-home tests for all participating staff and students that can be used on a weekly basis. So the idea is to hopefully get this going by January 31st, that what we do is alternate. So 1 week would be providing our staff with 2 tests, kind of a test packet. So each staff member would be able to test with 1 test 1 week, next test the next week, and then on the week that follows that, we provide families with 2 tests for their particular child. So if you have 2 children, you're going to get 2 test kits, which would have 4 tests in it. The idea is to use it on a regular basis, kind of like we would with a pool testing if you're asymptomatic. And of course, it's there for your use if you do have a symptom and you want to test. So this is the effort in the transition. Again, just some of the specifics about the new option. DESE and DPH recommend that districts and schools select this new option. So again, it's recommended by DESE and DPH. And if they choose to implement it, they must notify their local boards of health. We're in the process of having conversations. I'll have more information on that. This is really hot off the press. Don't even have the templates with which to communicate this to families yet, but because we're not going to have a school committee meeting before this goes into place, if our Board of Health agrees to it, and if the committee has no issue with it, then indeed I need to be able to talk about this. So this was really my opportunity to do so. Please note this new option is only available to districts and schools that continue or start symptomatic and/or pool testing, which we're doing. Districts and schools that choose to maintain test and stay will continue contact tracing and will not be eligible to receive rapid antigen. So that's really what I wanted to share at this point. The way we'll opt in is we will be sending out information with a link where you'd be putting your opt-in information for your child. And then we would collect that. And then when it comes time to distribute the test kits, we'll be able to distribute it to you for each child you have. So I don't know if the committee has any additional questions on that, or, if this is information that's new, if you want to entertain any questions from families at this point on that.
Sure. Before we do that, I want to say 2 things. One is our wonderful reporter, Kathy Bach. I'm just hoping that she can mute her microphone, because I don't want the keyboard clacking interfering with the audio at home. If people, I don't know if it is or not, but out of an abundance of caution, hopefully.
I just muted it.
Okay, perfect. And then also, I was remiss at the beginning of the meeting. We were, I think, all excited to be opening up at the Northern Commons, but I think it's important to note that the town and Wilcott Commons were very gracious in hosting our meetings.
Yes.
For a while. And they were essentially solely responsible for us being able to have hybrid meetings and move into an in-person format. So, and it took a number of different people to make that happen. And it wasn't the smoothest transition because we were all working together to harness that technology. But it eventually worked really well. It was a great space for us. We had a lot of great meetings there, and I wanted to make sure that they understood how appreciative we were. I was just, I guess I was just, overcome with the relief that we were finally back in the school after waiting for this machine for so long. And
I join you with that.
I neglected to thank them.
Yes, they were really instrumental in keeping things afloat here and kind of bail this out in a tough situation. So I absolutely would be remiss if I didn't thank them as well.
So with that said, yes, let's see if any school committee members have any questions for you. We can go in. Why don't we go in reverse alphabetical order? Because I see Ms. St. Ange is locked and loaded with the
Yeah,
question.
I'm just curious because I am a teacher and
Yes.
because the state decided after the last vacation, hey, we're going to give out tests to everybody and everyone's going to get a box with 2 tests. And then they were like, whoa, actually, we're going to give you 1 test.
Yeah.
We don't have enough tests. So I'm curious if this stock exists, if this is like actual tangible tests
Yeah.
that are in hand before we say, yeah, let's go for it. Because I think that was that was a very frustrating situation as a person who was essentially promised 2 tests by the state, and I just don't want to set up our families and staff to once again be in that type of situation. The staff would be a repeat, families would be new. That's my concern.
Can the state cash this check?
Correct.
Yeah, I don't
You have
claim
to
to be a
test in the
spokes. I mean,
No, I know,
Your
it's-
question's a good one, and it was a tough scenario. I also want to say, you know, in defense of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, not to say that you were casting aspersions, they were really trying to help. They were really trying to do something that helped our staff feel a sense of security across the state in coming back with that and the N95 masks, which also got some bad press because they weren't tested ahead of time. They've actually been tested since, and they've been found to be 98% effective according to the latest test. But by the time that information got out, the damage was done and people thought those were defective. I agree with you. Out of respect for the state, I didn't personally ask that question.
Yeah.
I would assume that is the case, that they're fully prepared. I mean, you saw the governor provided all this information very, very transparently to families yesterday. And they're staying by it. And so I have to believe that this is the case, although I can understand the concern.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to make sure that is something that is discussed or checked in on before any shift is considered, because that's a really big deal.
It is. And what they're telling us is, we'll know, the staff, again, we won't discontinue anything until we're up and ready with
Yeah.
test kits.
Yeah.
So no one should think that there's going to be anything lost in translation here. It's going to be, till we get them, we're not going to change what we're doing right now.
Great.
But my thought is, when we do get them, this does afford us with some, with a change, which I think will be productive for us for in-person learning.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mrs. St. Ange. Mr. Kearney?
I'm just grateful that these tests are available these days. My children went up to a Bible camp this weekend, and we just went and got tested at the local CVS and tested them, and they were fine. And gotta be honest, it's nice to know that they're fine. And so I think this is definitely a great tool that gives you, first of all, the response time was 15 minutes. We could find out in 15 minutes.
That's right.
So everybody's cool, 15 minutes, like, let's go back and enjoy our lives. So I welcome the technology, and I understand the concerns. And as soon as it's up and running, I think we should go for it. So,
Yeah, I mean, the way I understand it, it's totally opt-in. And, we're really operating on people telling us if their child is positive. It's an important factor in this. And then we go through the process. But I agree, it's a good tool. I got my own home, we use them, often when we do have somebody that has a cold or whatever. It's just an important part of life now. And the fact that we're able to provide families with that through the state, I think is a good development as we try to move towards what will really be, I think, the next stage in this, which is, testing, really focusing on the symptomatic individuals, those individuals who test positive, and not necessarily chasing the contact tracing to the level we've been doing because of the data I just showed you, and also because of the real inefficiency in doing it at this point. Just putting it out there.
Thank you, Mr. Kearney. Mr. Dodd?
Yeah, I'm gonna apologize in advance. I've got a few questions.
That's fine.
And a lot of it comes from the fact that all this stuff is like a logic game to me, and it takes me a while to understand. I think I feel like I just got a handle on our current procedures, and now we're gonna.
I know, it is. It's a changing logic game too.
Right.
I would say.
So one question, building on Ms. St. Ange's comment. Did they talk about the logistics of distribution? Are these going to be directly mailed to each family? Are they going to be mailed to the school who will mail them to families? How will families and staff get their hands on these potentially extant tests?
We don't know that yet. And we're gonna know soon, because again, we're gonna have to pivot, get information out to families to opt in, because if all goes well for us, we'll need to have that opt-in done by the 28th, so that we can distribute these on the 31st, and that's when we start. My belief in hearing the webinar today is that we would be getting, and it was flooded with questions. So we got to the point where they presented and then they could only answer some of the questions. We're still waiting for things like templates to come out to us to communicate it. Because I haven't, as you say, I haven't done anything written communication with this yet. Because I didn't, even though I, like all of you, saw the governor's information, and of course, it affected me viscerally because I knew I was gonna have to turn around, get this out to folks. I don't have that yet. I don't see it being a mailing situation. I see it being more of a pickup situation. How that translates to younger students, I'm not sure yet. But the way I understood it is it would be alternating weeks so that we would, and if I'm wrong, I will correct myself when I get the information that clarifies. But from what I understood from the presentation, 1 week we'd be giving it out to staff. And then the next week, and what I mean by it is it's a 2-pack test. And then the next week we give it out to families. And the idea is that you'd use those 2 tests for your child over a 2-week period.
So in that model, students would bring them home from school or parents would have to come get them, I guess. Figure out the logistics.
We'll figure that, the logistics of that out. You know, I certainly want to talk to my principals and hear from staff on what the best way to do that is.
Because it's,
I'm open for ideas too. If we're given local control over that,
right.
you know, probably. But the backpack idea, I don't know. I don't know how people feel about it. I'd like to hear more about that. But I'd like to first hear the plan of the state.
Yep.
And they haven't given us that info yet.
Yeah.
Other than my implicit belief, based on what I saw, that we'll be handing these out at schools.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm often impressed in this meeting at the complexity of our school organization, and adding this on is effectively turning you into a logistics company as well. Getting every other week a test to the family of every student in Cohasset is I mean, that's like what UPS does. They're a whole business. So that is something that I really want to make sure that we can digest as a operational matter, and would like to learn a little bit more about that. On timing, it's slated to go in on January 31st. What happens if we don't opt in on January 31st? Is it this ship has sailed, we can never get in again, or is it, you know, we could go in on February 8th?
You can go, so January 31st is that's the most aggressive timeline we could possibly do it because of apparently there's basically, well, I'm already signed up preemptively, you know, the minute I could do it, I signed us up just because we can always pull it back if we need to. But I don't know what the queue is going to be like. Again, there seems to always be some logistical hiccups in all this, as Ms. St. Ange mentioned. So, I mean, we really have to see how it plays out. The only thing I would say is that we won't change current methods until we have those in tow and have a method to give them out. But they've announced that the programming for those who sign up efficiently could be as early as the 31st.
And then that brings me to another question. This is the logic game element.
Mm-hmm.
Can you walk me through an example of current and then new? Like, you know, if you're using a, you know, hypothetical student who is positive, you know, what happens now, and then how would that change going forward?
Yes, so if you have a student who's positive, you're at home, you're obviously have tested the student as the child upon the positive. You call the nurse, and then we communicate that from a numbers perspective to DESE, and then I believe we're communicating also with our local board of health because they communicate back and forth. That actually won't change. That process is going to be the exact same. What will change is that now if we have a person who is positive, a kid or an adult who's positive, we get the information, we immediately enact what's called contact tracing, which means we look to see what categories that person fit in the guidance to be a close contact within the time that person would have potentially been contagious, which is usually 2 days before onset of symptoms, or if asymptomatic, 2 days before the test day. That's the zone, and then we would contact trace. That's old. Would it be news? We would not contact trace.
Well, and so just to flesh out the old, so we contact trace, we inform families who are in that contact.
So we inform families in two categories. And obviously students, the family, we inform families who are close contacts, which means you're within 6 feet of an individual who's masked, okay? And the rules that constitute that, if you're within 3 feet masked or within 6 feet unmasked, then you are a quarantining close contact. That, if you were a close contact in the school, quarantining close contact, then you'd be eligible for test and stuff.
Right.
Okay, those who are close contacts outside of school that have to quarantine because of a close, they are not eligible for test and stay.
Right.
Test and stay will be no more in the new model.
So the new model, there's no contact tracing, so people aren't informed, but they don't need to be informed because there is no more quarantining as a result of close contact. Citation 98%, nobody gets sick based on the hundreds of thousands.
And there'll be no more test and stay.
No more test and stay. Okay, that's really helpful for me. I don't want to steal Ms. Caleri's question. I imagine she's going to go back to it. We're going to do it anyway because we're in reverse alphabetical order. Are there any footnotes in that presentation that indicated the dates on which that data was generated?
Well, let me look. 1 second, bear with me. So I assume what we're talking about for data is,
Yeah, the hundreds of thousands of tests, the 98%.
yeah, what was that?
Like that's
I
data.
think it would be in the very
Right
end.
there?
It would be at the very end, like sources or.
No, I know, but I want to see if there's a footnote, excuse me.
It's actually.
There were no footnotes.
What am I saying? All right, well, there's another document that I can look at that might be able to tell us that, because they did send this in memo form. And,
You want me to?
no, I got it here. So it's, sometimes this is just so surreal, everyone. All right, so for example, the individual positivity rate in K-12 schools in the state's pooled testing, you find that on here, so we're on the same thing.
Yep.
Is that, oh my- Just looking for that, right? Well, let me read it to you, because there is a footnote here. It says, for example, the individual positivity rate in K-12 schools in the state's pooled testing data revealed case rates significantly lower than statewide positivity rate. Last week, despite elevated, well, this is one that's not in there, elevated K-12 positivity, the estimated individual positivity rate was still only 1/5 of the statewide positivity rate. That has a footnote, and it says K-12 positivity source, CIC K-12 data from processing laboratories, published on a weekly basis on Thursdays.
Okay, that could include, so I mean,
Yep,
that
now,
particular fact name.
the, okay, here it is. It's actually not cited. It says, data from our test and stay program are equally strong about school safety. Students and staff individually identified as asymptomatic close contact and repeatedly tested in school through the test and stay program, test negative over 90% of the time. As of January 9th, 503,312 test and stay tests have been conducted. 496,440 of them were negative, 98.6.
January 9th.
January 9th.
Also, as a person in school, a heck of a lot of those tests were done between the return from vacation and January 9th. If it's anything like where I work.
Okay, well, there's one here that says, there's evidence from California, that one where it says, I guess it's, I don't know, not doing well with this, guys, I'm sorry. Right here, that footnote number 1, well, you can see where it's from, and it doesn't give any more information here.
Okay.
So I leave it to you, without the citation information, because we don't have it.
Last question for me. There's a requirement under the new policy that people take the tests and then inform the school of the positive result. What is the school to do with that information?
So the school, we do a couple things. We confer with our Board of Health. And then we also send that information as a number to DESE and our weekly report each week.
So it's a data collection exercise as opposed to a, school attendance policy.
Well, yeah, I mean,
You
you
expect
still,
no one to come to school.
we're still bound by the quarantine guidelines. Remember, if you're positive, you have to quarantine for 5 days if you're asymptomatic. Remember, returning on day 6 with a mask for the next 5 days. If you're positive of symptoms, it goes to the other protocol, which is after 10 days. So that is, that's not gonna change.
It goes to 10 days if you had symptoms ever?
If you're still
No,
having
so if
Still having
if you're not
symptoms. Sorry,
asymptomatic
thank
and you
you.
have symptoms, yeah, you can't come back until you're fully without symptoms for, I believe, 24 hours.
Okay.
That's helpful.
That won't change.
I think I'm just gonna see it before.
All right, well, if Mrs. Dial comments, we'll let her know that she's already exceeded her household. And hopefully it relieves your logistical concerns, Mr. Dial, that I have no doubt that the state will provide the responses to your inquiries at least 45 minutes in advance of when we need to confront this.
No, that only makes the worries more acute, but.
And it also tells you, this is Department of Public Health supported, it's voluntary. And it's highly recommended. So it just tells you a little bit about the flow of where we're going with things in general here and the pandemic.
Mrs. Galera.
I feel like I have to resist so much to be like sarcastic. I mean, it's like highly recommend.
Well, it's not my presentation, so I mean, I'm just
Volunteer.
sharing with you.
All right. Thank you for sharing that with us. I only have 2 very brief questions. Well, one question. Will you put that in the navigator?
Well, so this is so like hot off the press that I don't even have the logistics all
I know.
like, settled
But
yet.
can you put those slides in it or no?
I will put something that makes sense in the navigator.
Good luck.
And like, so I'll look at those slides and make sure that I can, I can provide information that's digestible by families, but we have to turn this over fairly quickly.
Right.
So I think you can anticipate something in the navigator, but you can also anticipate a separate communication, which will provide clarity on some of the questions that have been asked here, because they're universal questions. And it will go out to families, because I do have to have families opt in order to give them their test kits. And I have to officially make sure that we're all, we are signed up, but the timeline flow I just talked about is actually going to happen. Keeping in mind that the timeline is what they've given to me, but we won't start it until we have the tools to do it.
Okay, and I would like to know a little, I don't understand the student test part. So students, every other week, it's like teachers and then students.
So no, that's when I get so it's when we hand them out. So every 2 weeks, the way I understand it, is just forget the teachers for a second.
Okay,
Every 2 weeks, we provide families with
every kid.
2 tests.
It's
Two
2 tests.
options.
Every family who opts in for
Yeah.
their kid gets 2 tests.
Yeah.
Which that student should use over a 2-week period. Next 2 weeks, in 2 more weeks, they come back and give them another test
Oh,
kit.
so the students are expected, everyone's expected to use those tests upon distribution, one each week.
That's the idea. That's the idea, is to get, or to use it when you feel you're symptomatic and need to use it. Does that make sense?
No, but
And then
it's
we're
not
not
your
test
fault.
hoarding because it's
Nevertheless, that's what it
available.
is.
You're just regularly proactively testing. You're not,
So rather than give out a test kit with 1 test every week, so say on Thursday, you come and you get tests for your children.
Supposedly for efficiency.
Rather than give it every week,
and
we
they
give
come
it
to the
out.
box. So
Right.
Yeah,
that's how you're getting it.
there are 2 in a box, so we give
Cutting
it out
down
every
on
other.
waste with our Ziploc
It's
bag.
down to-
So that's the way I understand this, and it's sort of an
So
alternate.
this is the reason I'm asking, and it's anecdotal and it's personal, and it's like, because, so we did the COVID thing, right? After New Year's, right? We got COVID. And my daughter, over break, was waking up every day with a sore throat, and I am totally neurotic, so every day I was testing her
Yeah.
for COVID, right? Every day. And she didn't test positive until the 4th day. Okay, so she's symptomatic.
Yeah.
And testing negative.
Yeah.
Right, and so was I. When I tested positive, it was the 3rd COVID test after I started having
Yeah.
symptoms.
Yeah.
So this is, I know that there's no such thing as a perfect science when it comes to this stuff. I just feel like this is so much work for very little
Well,
accuracy.
I don't think anyone feels that giving out 2 tests per week will necessarily solve the problem.
No.
I think it's just making sure, remember, there's all kinds of ways that we can get tests now, there's a link that I sent out to my staff where they can sign up
Yeah.
and get, for their households. Right, all of that stuff is really, is productive. And you're right, it is a risk mitigation strategy that they've
I
really
just don't
weighed.
want us to feel like we're like addressing the problem. I want us to
Well-
know that this is like one piece of what we should be doing.
So I think the note here that they've shifted with the situation and what the situation has brought to us. So there was a time when we were, quarantining for a longer period of time.
Right.
There was a time when we were quarantining close contacts who
Right.
were outside of 3 feet, within 6 feet. We were making them stay home. I mean, there was a time when we did remote learning. Like, there's a
Yeah,
time and
progress,
season for
I agree.
everything within this pandemic.
Yeah.
And I guess what they're telling us right now is we've reached a time when they believe that in-person learning, they've also prioritized the vaccinated individuals in school, I should say highly vaccinated schools, to say that the data is showing that it's hitting the vaccinated at a less, in a less harsh way.
Yeah.
So they've prioritized those schools to be able to, so they're making decisions based on what the epidemiologists are telling them to do. They're creating requirements, and they're going through things based on the current situation that the pandemic has provided us.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's what we need to be doing. We need to be looking at the current state of the pandemic, the flow of the pandemic personally, and make decisions based on that. That's what they're doing. So right now, they say that, they came up with their feeling you can quarantine for 5 days. That was a massive shift from a positive person quarantining for 11 days. They changed that.
God, I can tell you, we never would have survived.
Well, I'm just saying, so they're making decisions based on the factors presented to them.
Yeah.
And I'm not an epidemiologist, although sometimes I feel like I'm talking more about it. But it really is, this is what they're doing. It's weighing the odds and weighing in-person learning, looking at where we are as a society through the pandemic. And they're talking about this being a show of their adaptability during changing times. And that's what we're trying to do.
Okay,
That's it.
let's keep
Thank you.
moving. Are there any
Yes.
comments from the community on this topic?
Well, is this the?
No, this is the new and improved
Okay,
testing.
so Maura Sherry Maura, if you're listening, if you could type your address into the Q&A, that would be great. Asks, is the data of low close contact transmission found in schools that have mask mandates or not?
Yeah, the answer is yes, mask mandates and not mask mandates. This is
It's
data,
a mix, right?
it's a total mix.
Yeah. And 15 Virginia Lane, thank you. And also says to note with Omicron, you are contagious before experiencing symptoms.
Well, you were with the other
Yeah,
strains too, to be fair.
okay, thank you.
Is that it with regards to this topic?
There's other, it's like a masks in middle school.
All right, well, we're getting into that. We haven't even gotten there yet.
All right, that was an important note, like, if I didn't mention it now, I would never have had a
No,
chance to
no,
talk to
we
you.
have to mention it for sure.
Okay. All right, so now I guess we can jump into our discussion about the
Let's,
threshold vaccination. So I'm going to share the document again, and just to make sure everybody knows what we're talking about here. So this particular document has been amended a few times. It tells you right here. Remember, this is the extension of the mask requirement. Now that seems a little oddly stated because we're a threshold school. We're one of, not many in the Commonwealth, but we have 2 schools in one building that fit that category. But for everybody else, there's a mask mandate that has been shifted now a few times. it was shifted to October 1st, then it was shifted to November 1st, then it was shifted to January 15th. And then on January 10th, it was shifted, as we were getting close to the 15th, it was shifted again to February 28th. I sent that out to everyone, but what was not brought to my attention, that was present in the document, and I found it later, a day later, but I still found, I mean, it was later, that I tried to send out the information right away, was a note about the threshold schools. Now remember, DESE's requirements are that everybody mask, with this one exception. If you have a school, and we learned, and we were, I believe, the test case for this, a school constitutes a building, okay, where you have a group of individuals, be it one school or two schools in there, who have reached the 80% threshold for vaccinated individuals, that's students and staff combined. Now, we currently are well above 80% as a high school, well above 80% as a combination school, and above 80% as a middle school individually. So any way you slice this building up that we're in, we're above 80% vaccinated. They always had it as a requirement. This wasn't a choice. This wasn't something we could, as a school committee, you have the purview of masking. This wasn't a choice for you to make. They had it as a requirement that if you wanted to go with this requirement, you have the ability to be more restrictive. But if you want to go with the requirement, it used to be, before January 10th, that unvaccinated individuals were required to mask. And we went through great pains of searching legal avenues to be able to try to monitor this as best we could and to do it at our high school. Well, on January 10th, in that mask mandate extension, they changed the language. And the language I put in red here, and you can see, it says, the 80% threshold policy remains in effect. Whether or not a school or district avails itself of the 80% vaccination off-ramp is a local decision to be made by school and district leaders in consultation with local health officials. Here's the note. In alignment with statewide guidance, it is highly recommended that unvaccinated students and staff continue wearing masks. So that's a material change in the guidance. So I thought it was important for one, the school committee and community to know that, and two, to give the school committee an opportunity to discuss that in view of our current policy. And just to remind people who are watching out there, our current policy, which has adapted as we've moved, now allows masks to be optional for vaccinated individuals, and because of the timeline, right now, currently, vaccinated individuals only at our middle and high school. Unvaccinated individuals currently, according to our policy, at our middle and high school need to mask. At all other schools, obviously, everyone's masking because we're not at that 80% threshold. However, because you voted when you had information that was very different than this statement, I thought it was important for you to consider that, because if you do want to change this to reflect this requirement, then you would have to do so by vote, and that would have to happen in an open session. So that's really the discussion point at this point.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sullivan, for that introduction. I would like to turn to the community first, unless there are any strenuous objections from any of my fellow committee members. Okay, I don't see any. So let's turn to the community first. What I will say, and I have no idea how many comments there are. There may not be that many, but I will say I am, what's that? Okay, there's only one. So that's fine. Even though there's only one, sometimes we get talking and then there are more. I'm going to set a time limit on this entire discussion to 60 minutes max, and that includes the school committee comments. So I'm gonna give up to 30 minutes for the community voices, okay, which would afford, you know, if you make a 30-second comment, I mean, that would be 60 comments that we could field, and I don't think there's gonna be that many. I'm just saying, we've talked about this topic so much. I've emailed many members of the community. It's just, we have to streamline this discussion a little bit. So I'm gonna allot a maximum of 30 minutes for the community insight sharing and community statements. And then we'll give the school committee up to 30 minutes if we need that. I don't know if we will, but either way, I really don't want to exceed an hour on this. So with that said, Mrs. Caleri, could you read the comment or comments?
My name is Lillian Miller. I live at 195 Hull Street in Cohasset, and I work as an aide at the Cohasset High School. During the last 2 weeks, I've noticed that more than 1/5 of the students and teachers in the high school have been absent due to COVID-19. This rate of absenteeism has a serious impact on the education of our young people. If everyone would wear masks, the spread of COVID-19 infections would be greatly reduced. Not only would a mask mandate reduce illness among our students, teachers, and their families, but it would also result in an improved, less stressful educational experience. Finally, are schools not considered municipal buildings? If so, the town of Cohasset requires that everyone entering a municipal building wear a mask. These are but a few reasons why we should resume mask mandates till the Omicron pandemic is curtailed.
Okay, are there any others?
Jenna Cunningham, 15 Hill Street. You've had much experience working with and following DESE guidance closely this school year. I'm curious as to why the members of this school board and Superintendent Sullivan think DESE changed the wording from required to highly recommended on January 10th, 2022 for those unvaccinated in schools that have attested 80% vaccination rate and no longer have mask mandates for the vaccinated.
Well, that was the first version of that memorandum where I had seen that wording.
That was the first version and the only version where that wording has been there.
Otherwise, the unvaccinated individuals were still required to mask. This was the whole,
So I think Mrs. Cunningham is asking, well, I don't want to go out of order. I don't know if you wanted me to answer that one?
please.
So to talk about Mrs. Cunningham, I think she's asking why we think the guidance was changed from,
I see.
the
impetus.
yeah. So
But why do we?
I don't know.
we speculate?
I don't know. I would just be speculating. You know, I know there was some, I really don't know. I mean, it'd really be speculation. I know there was some talk about, is the building in itself,
I don't even think it makes sense.
I really
mean,
don't.
I really don't.
We could, I think there might be one thing we got, so that we had spoken since this first came out, and you mentioned that there was a call or something where this was discussed, and it was not brought up there. So,
okay, yes, so there was, well, the call, I was blindsided by this, honestly. There was talk of, with superintendents on a call, basically saying that there was mostly schools that hadn't implemented it yet, but had the 80% threshold, were saying that it was difficult, that they were running into some obstacles trying to police this. And there was talk of potentially which I like, they took that seriously. They thought about it, and they said they were gonna perhaps provide some help with that. That was it. Like, and that was a week before break, so, I mean, I was thinking that might come, but no one said that it was coming.
and this was issued without any discussion from DESE.
Other than that, I believe without any discussion. So, you know, and I caught it because somebody else caught it. Meaning caught it, I didn't catch anything, but I caught the mistake. Or the new language in it because someone brought it to my attention, because I've seen this document so many times.
Yeah.
I wasn't looking for it. But, you know, it was a day later, but I did tell people when they heard about it.
We have another question.
Great.
From Laura Sherry, 15 Virginia Lane. Don't we see the widespread of Omicron reason for returning to masks as protection temporarily?
I think a lot of people see it that way. I think probably the school committee members will address these points when we're going around. I don't know, I mean, because I'm sure everyone has a different perspective on this, so I think everyone have Mrs. Sherry, as soon as everyone has their chance to talk, I'm sure we'll address that point. I mean, that is certainly one common position amongst some folks in the community.
I'll just share one concern I have is the data that shows that with Omicron in particular, its infectious profile is such that masks may have less benefit than they have had with other strains. I know that research is there. I know other people cite other research. There's lots of different views on this. But I don't think, from what I've been able to learn, that this is the slam dunk with Omicron as it was with other variants on the efficacy of masking, how much it improves the situation.
I'm sure everyone will address that in a moment. Are there any other
Yes.
comments?
The Sylvia family, 40 Fair Oaks Lane. I want to voice my support of the updated DESI guidance to also unmask the unvaccinated along with the vaccinated due to the segregation and discrimination once the 80% threshold was met. I appreciate the school committee following the DESI guidance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's another position that's commonly held by a number of people in the community. Anything else?
Not right now.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, there we go.
Katie Lubitz, 103 Border Street. I want to start by thanking this committee for their service. This is our oldest daughter's first year in the class at public schools, and we are very grateful for the work done by the school committee, superintendent, and his team, and the teachers and staff at the schools during these challenging and unprecedented times. One issue that I've had as a parent with the narrative surrounding any discussion related to masking children is that it is always framed with concepts like, the kids don't mind wearing masks, and the kids are so resilient. It's a dangerous catchphrase that has become part of our everyday lexicon. Yes, children are resilient and their teachers are resilient and creative, but I think it's important for the members of this committee to acknowledge that requiring children who data has shown are generally the very least vulnerable to COVID-19 creates a massive barrier to their social and emotional learning and their development. I don't think anyone should forget that as they are making these important policy decisions. I do want to be clear that I am opposed to any type of mask mandate for school-age children in our community, regardless of vaccination status, but I will focus on the narrow question being addressed today by the committee. The CDC has acknowledged, and I think most of us are seeing and experiencing this firsthand in real time, that the COVID vaccine does not prevent a person from getting COVID or from transmitting it to another person. This is particularly true if you are looking at the Omicron variant, which is the primary variant that is now infecting most people in the New England states. The purpose of a mask mandate is to reduce the numbers of people who contract and transmit COVID in our schools. Then should vaccination status matter? I would urge this committee to take this important first step of allowing the unvaccinated students in schools that are over 80% vaccinated to choose whether or not to wear a mask.
Thank you, Ms. Lubitz.
Eileen Norton, 390 Beechwood Street. Test and stay was not available to vaccinated individuals. Will the new at-home tests be available to both vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals?
Yes, great point of clarification. Absolutely. The idea is it would be available to both vaccinated and unvaccinated, all students, anybody who opts in. That's one. And any staff who opts in, that's all staff, every level of staff gets the test.
Anything else?
Not at this time.
Okay. Why don't we start with you, Mrs. Caleri?
And we're specifically talking about what now?
We're specifically talking about whether or not we want to change the current policy, which requires the unvaccinated students to still wear masks, even in those buildings that have achieved the 80% vaccination threshold, which would be a more restrictive position than what is currently recommended by DESI, which is what we have traditionally adopted. So basically, are you in
Before I
favor
say
of being
something, I'm
more
going to ask
restrictive or?
Tara Chisholm to put her address in the Q&A, please. Okay? And do you want me to still go, or do you want me to wait for her to put that in there?
We'll get to hers.
Okay.
We're already going.
Okay, so I personally believe that it is, and nor should it have ever been, our job to police all of this. I believe people are in positions in state government to make decisions like this. While I completely appreciate local issues being nuanced and different, and I guess that some people really would like smaller government, and I respect that. I do believe that in a situation like this, our committee should not be also acting as a public health authority. I believe that now, 2 years into this, we have experienced a lot of change, of course. We've all sort of adapted the best way that we can to this, you know, quote unquote, I hate the term new normal, 'cause it's not normal, and it's no longer feeling very new. And I think that for this is a personal opinion, right? And I totally respect that different people have different opinions on this. I believe the tool of using the vaccine to lessen the risk of serious illness is now available to most people. And I believe that the people, so that is a choice that people can exercise if they choose to, if they are able to access that choice, right? So my primary concern is for people who are maybe immunocompromised in some way or are medically fragile that prevents them from accessing the protection of a vaccine, or are under the age of 5 and are not yet eligible. This also may be a somewhat like, I don't, whatever. I feel like it is probably likely that a lot of the children who are under 5 probably don't have as many, like it's not as common occurrence for them to have high school siblings, and maybe even less so middle school. Like I believe that, you know, for the most part, their big siblings are usually at the Deer Hill and Osgood. I understand there are outliers and that there are exceptions to every rule. I personally have children at the Osgood and the Deer Hill, and I am glad that we are not considering unmasking them. I just am. So I do feel for the grown-ups who have family and loved ones at the middle school and high school who feel passionately that they should be masked through this situation that we're in currently. All of that being said, I have the personal experience of having gotten COVID. And I feel like our family tried to be pretty, I mean, we did some things during COVID, right? Like I was on the road all summer, but like, we are not opposed to masks. We are not opposed to vaccines. We are for those things. And I still wear a mask. I'm fully vaccinated, boosted. My kids are vaccinated. I still wear a mask at the grocery store and at Whole Foods, sir. I love my mask in public settings because I feel like it's an added layer of protection, and I don't need to get sick if I don't want to get sick, right? Well, to a degree. All that being said, I have been also seeing a lot of information that says that only certain masks are very effective in preventing the spread of this new variant. And so I feel like if we're not going to provide every kid and every teacher, or mandate every kid and every teacher wear an N95 mask, like, and I don't think that's a realistic thing to do, or even really honestly a necessary thing to do, to be perfectly honest. I mean, I just don't think having kids wear cloth masks at school is going to move the needle. I haven't decided. I would like to hear what the rest of the committee, where the rest of the committee stands on all of this. I have gotten a few emails and talked to a few grown-ups about this. And, but where I'm tempted to say I stand is that I would like for our district to just be in line with DESI guidance. But I remain open as the rest of the committee shares their perspective.
Thank you, Mrs. Colery. I see that there are other comments coming in, but what we'll do is, because we've already had that time, we will go back to them before we make any decisions, so we're hearing everyone's perspective, but we've already given the school committee the floor, so I want to continue with that stream here. So we'll turn to Mr. Dial at this point. So if you do have a question pending, don't worry. We'll absolutely read it in the record and consider it before any decision is made, if any decision is made. But right now, Mr. Dial, the floor is yours.
First, I'm extremely grateful that Ms. Cleary went first. This is a very complicated topic, and I think she laid out a lot of the considerations very well. I guess on the narrow question of do we adjust to the new DESI guidance, which would be a narrow revision that would allow unvaccinated students and staff to be unmasked in the middle and high school.
Well, right now, because those are the only threshold schools.
Those are the only threshold schools right now. Because those have done the application and then they have exceeded the vaccination. I share Ms. Colery's thinking on deference to the health and school experts at DESI. They have input, I imagine, from epidemiologists, from health people, from doctors, from education, from pedagogical experts. They have more input than we have, and they are taking that information, and they have come to this decision. I do, however, think that our job as a school committee is to take that recommendation and then apply it to our district. And I'm still struggling with this. If the motivation for the change, and this is, get back to Mrs. Cunningham's question, that we don't know. But if the motivation for the change was more about the enforceability and some of the other, some districts that are having challenges separating vaccinated and unvaccinated people, making sure that they are enforced and making sure that that is a thing that they can do, which I understand is a challenge. That challenge seems to be felt more acutely in other districts than ours. I think our district, from our conversations, has not had the same level of challenge with that. We've come up with, we're a smaller district. We're able to do things that maybe larger districts can't do. So we may not need to respond to that need in a way that, say Boston Public Schools does. So maybe as DESI was considering this, they were thinking about all of the risks, understanding there's this huge administrative cost, not a huge benefit, but maybe we don't have the same administrative cost. I don't know. I do know there's some anxiety about Omicron. I received the same notes. And I know that there are some people who are very worried about that. On the other hand, I don't know that that this change, although slightly liberalizing it, our policy, is going to move the needle. I don't think at issue is anything beyond that narrow question of do we allow unvaccinated staff and students. And if these buildings are already at 80%, then by definition, we're talking about a very small, at most 20% of the population that would now be able to unmask. So I don't necessarily know. I do want to hear other community input. I want to hear from my fellow committee members because as you can hear from my equivocating comments, I'm kind of like, six of one, half of those the other. I don't know where I'm going to land. I guess if I was forced to say something now, I'd probably lean towards let's move towards DESI guidance. I find that reliance on them to be compelling, but I do want to hear other perspectives.
Thank you, Mr. Dial. Mr. Kearney.
Yes, thank you. These were very well thought out points. Basically, DESI, if we can pull that back up, it says they're strongly recommending all students, vaccinated or not, should wear masks, but not mandatory, correct?
Yes, it's in red here.
Highly recommended, right,
And that is a change from required.
right. Okay, so it's highly recommended that we wear masks. And that's, I think that's and to Mrs. Clary's point, Mr. Dial, I also think that DESI's, they're the professionals. They're the ones that know this. They're also saying to you that, we talked about Whole Foods. You go into Whole Foods, some people have masks, some people don't. It's what your comfort level is. If you think it works, it works. Be vaccinated, be vaccinated. that said, I think that we should go with DESI and gives people the option to mask up or not mask up. It's basically, it's stunning to me that, people can go to bars and without masks and, in all these other areas, I can play basketball without a mask, but my kids can't. They can go to Starland and there's no masks anywhere. I guess there's no COVID at Starland, but it's kind of like, it's kind of crazy, right? So I think this is kind of putting it to, if you feel comfortable, what's your comfort zone? What do you feel like you gotta be safe? And that to me makes sense. So I think this is something that, I'm hoping that this new outbreak is it is going down, and we will see it extended to go down. And I just think that I would leave it up to DESI to make that consideration. So I would recommend that we go with DESI's recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Kearney. Mr. St. Ange?
I think that it's really hard to make a shift in our thinking because we've been told to follow these rules and we've been told to be so careful and stay home for 10 days and do all of these things. But I agree that we need to listen to what professionals are saying. When the CDC shifted their recommendation from 10 days to 5 days, there were amazing jokes on Twitter. I mean, I loved those threads. I was on board, but joking aside, those are the scientists and they have done research that inform that decision. And now scientists are doing, have done research that has informed DESI to shift their language. And I think that we all, like when a nor'easter is coming, we all feel like a meteorologist. Perhaps now we all feel like epidemiologists. And no one in this room is. We are all school committee members, but we all have other careers and specialties. And I think that in order to evolve with this pandemic, we are going to have to follow what the research is telling us. And I personally will probably continue to, I have to, I literally work in an elementary school, so I'm never non-masking, but when I feel like I should have a mask on, I will put my mask on. And the same with the rest of my family, and we'll make that decision as a family. And some situations feel higher risk to us than others. But I do feel like it is important to trust the professionals and to follow their guidance. So that's where I stand right now.
Mr. St. Ange? I think that Mr. St. Ange hit on a very important point, which is what I want to reiterate first, is that if we do become less restrictive in our policy to follow the DESI guidance that is currently in place, we're not prohibiting people from wearing masks. So anyone is welcome to wear a mask if they'd like. And even though many people are able to unmask right now in high school, they're still choosing to wear a mask, even though they have that choice. And to an extent, not always, we're the adults that make decisions that drive the policies for the districts, which obviously is intended to be for the benefit of children. But we also do want our kids, especially our older groups, to start recognizing real life choices that they're going to have to make. And, frankly, in the world right now, masks really aren't mandated anywhere. They're mandated in very few situations. And overall, if you walk into a restaurant or a store or a gym or Starland or the arcade, you decide whether or not you're comfortable personally not being masked, or whether you feel that it's safe or maybe more respectful to others to wear a mask. And that's a personal choice you make. And I think that it makes sense to extend that same type of choice now that the health and education professionals are providing us the option of giving them that choice. I think it makes sense to do that. Secondly, it is of significant note that no national, state, or local health official or administrative agency has seen fit to mandate masks in schools. They strongly recommend them. And that doesn't mean that we could not become more restrictive in Cohasset. We could. We couldn't be less restrictive than what's required of us. but we could be more restrictive. And so we could keep the policy in place right now and still make unvaccinated individuals in the buildings wear masks. But there should be a compelling reason to do something like that. And there is not. There is not a compelling reason to do that. In fact, to the contrary, there is a compelling reason to go along with DESE guidance, not only because that's what the health officials and health administrative agencies have decided, but also because in our own community, and this is what is important to me, because throughout all of this, I feel like the media has irresponsibly delivered information that sometimes cavalierly masquerades as fact, and preys upon individuals' anxieties and emotions, which this entire pandemic has been absolutely wrought with anxiety and emotion, sometimes with very good reason, especially in the beginning when we didn't know as much. But now it's been 2 years, and we've been able to see this develop in our schools, and we've been able to see Omicron develop in our schools as of late. And what has it told us? Well, it tells us that there is, if you look at the infection rates, there's a very similar percentage, only within a few percentage points of infections in the high school, which was not spaced or masked, mandatory, since mid-December. Very similar percentage infection rates, from a percentage perspective. Again, there's more individuals in the high school, okay, to that of the elementary schools, where spacing and masking are still implemented to this day. That tells me that, and frankly, if you consider just the social differences between someone that might be 17 years old and someone that might be 7. A 7-year-old isn't getting home and hopping in their Chevy Blazer and going off to their friend's house to hang out for a while after school. I mean, they just have more social interactions. There's scholastic sports, things like that. So you'd expect a little bit of a higher rate in those age groups. And we had that. It's still a nominal difference, frankly, within a margin of error, I think, in a lot of respects. But to me, that demonstrates to a fairly compelling level that masks are not having a material impact on this. What they are having a material impact on is the teaching and learning in our schools. And that is obviously second to safety and health. But when the safety and health issue seems to not be the concern it once was, then the teaching and learning concern does take precedence. And I have been a guest teacher for a high school class this year. I have walked around with Dr. Sullivan and Dr. Scollins and Principal Scott and Principal Mills and seen, and Principal Farrell and Principal Sullivan, and seen teachers teaching and students learning and being able to hear the volume and being able to see how visual cues are missed. And when I was teaching, how even right now, when I'm speaking for long periods of time, it's harder to breathe in these things. It does adversely impact that. And there are also obviously social emotional considerations as well. So I think that it makes complete sense to go along with DESE guidance, be less restrictive than we were. I think that there are very reasonable people out there that feel strongly that the masks are having a significant material impact on this, that they feel that it is the prudent measure, is the most tempered approach. And I understand where they're coming from. I personally disagree with it, given the data that's in front of me about our schools in particular. And frankly, I think that the delivery of information throughout this pandemic has preyed upon, like I said, fears and anxieties. And I don't think we've heard enough at this point where, yes, it may be more contagious right now, but it is, I think, inarguably less severe, the symptoms. And I think that, thankfully, that's a wonderful thing. And I'm not trying to diminish the gravity of any sort of tragedies that have been, I'm not saying there haven't been tragedies from Omicron. I'm saying that generally speaking, they're fewer and farther in between than they were in the beginning, and much fewer and farther in between. And I think people need to get to the point where they start hearing from the news and from officials, and I think this might be DESE's way of saying it, same with the testing difference, that it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. It's going to be. And we know that from the numbers and from the less severe illnesses. And yes, there have been some absences, but the masks they're not having an impact on that. There's going to be the same amount of absences at the elementary school right now, basically, as the high school. From a percentage perspective, again, there's more individuals in the high school. So, there was a comment about absenteeism. That's true, but the masks aren't what's preventing that. So, we have to consider that. There's also a consideration, I think Mrs. Colery alluded to it, that as a community, I think it is incumbent upon us to protect our most vulnerable individuals. And, we are a village when it comes down to it. And, you want to protect the most vulnerable individuals. However, you want to do so in a sensible manner. And if there are individuals like Mrs. Colery was talking about, then I think a sensible way is to ensure that they're given the vaccines first in line, or they're provided some individual sort of, education product that might be suitable for their particular condition, something like that. But it doesn't make sense for everyone to impose a restriction on everyone else that doesn't seem to be having a material impact anyway. That does not make sense. So, like I said, I think there are a lot of sound positions that would refute mine, but the data relative to our particular district at this moment in time, yes, there were more infections after break. That happened last year too. There were more than that surge last year because Omicron is, I think, more contagious, but it's going in the right direction now. They are decreasing as we get further and further away from the break. It's not a cliff drop off, but they are. And I think that we need to get comfortable with the fact that people are going to catch this in school, out of school, and masks aren't required in life everywhere else in school. It just doesn't make sense. So I did want to acknowledge the sensibility of the perspectives of the emails that I was getting that were similar to one of the comments we heard, that expressed that it was prudent to have masks, but I think that our district's position at this point, I think, soundly refutes that position from a policy perspective. So I too am in favor of becoming less restrictive and adopting the DESI guidance. In anticipation that will eventually or ultimately in the not too distant future apply to our elementary schools as well. So I do note that the CTA, our Cohasset Teachers Association, had drafted a statement to be read, and I told Mr. Erlinson, who's the president of the CTA, that I would do that. I invited him to come and present it himself, but I think he had another obligation which prevented him from doing that. So I did want to keep to my promise and read that statement into the record. It reads as follows: Dear Superintendent Sullivan, Chairperson McClellan, and Cohasset School Committee members, thank you for discussing the vaccine threshold on masking decision tonight. While we understand that the choice to continue masking is a community decision, the CTA has surveyed its members in the middle high schools and would like to encourage a temporary revisiting of the unmasking decision. The past few weeks in the unmasked high school have severely hampered learning as staff and student alike have been stricken by COVID-19. While most serious health concerns have been thankfully prevented by vaccinations, the impact to personal and professional lives as well as school operation has been severe. The Omicron surge will ultimately diminish over the next month. During that time, sustaining masking in the secondary schools could prevent some of these negative impacts from occurring in the middle school and hopefully help get the high school back on track. In our survey of CMHS members, most would like to see an extension of at least 2 weeks, or preferably until the start of February break. Thank you for all you are doing during this difficult time, and remember that the staff of Cohasset Public Schools appreciate your thoughtfulness in this manner. They had presented some survey results, which are in the form of circle graphs, pie charts, and I guess I will just read the question and I'll give the most simplistic responses. A couple of them are just pretty much yes or no. There are only a few of these. They asked their members, do you feel that the current rate of COVID transmission is hampering teaching and learning in the middle high school? About 15% were no, and about 85% were yes. Do you feel that a return to masking would be justified? About 10% were no, and about 89% or 90% were yes. how many weeks would you like to see mask wearing extended for? There were a whole spectrum of responses here. The largest ones were not at all. So they would not like an extension at all. That was 13%, and 5 weeks, 50% preferred 5 weeks. I'm not going to go through each small percentage because it's just, again, it's those are the two opposite ends of the spectrum. So that was the CTA's statement, and I told Mr. Ellingson that I would read that. So turning back to Mr. Caleri, do we have any
Yes.
community insight that people would like us to share?
Tara Chisholm, 450 Jerusalem Road, with a 21% positivity rate in town, it would be reckless to have the children remove their masks at this time.
Okay.
Maura Shari, who is at 15 Virginia Lane, said, I agree wholeheartedly. These are decisions best made, These are decisions best made by health officials.
I believe she's now fulfilled her comment.
Well,
quota.
the first one was about a different issue.
But it's a total.
Oh,
I'm just saying.
oh, all right, thanks.
That's all.
Bob Erlinson, the CTA, would like to add a statement to the record. Done, thank you, Mr. Erlinson. Diane O'Leary, 16 Woodway, thanks to the school committee for yet again careful consideration of these issues. Everyone has a personal opinion, experience, or anecdote about COVID and masks, but that's not what should guide this decision, given that the committee has been consistent with DESE guidelines every step of the way through this. Why stop now? If we've followed the state through its most stringent guidelines, why stop just because those guidelines now perhaps became less stringent? If the community can pretend to desert anything through this saga, it's at least consistency.
Yeah, the community deserves consistency. We've been consistent with DESE so far, continue to be consistent with DESE.
Apologies for that stumble there. Apparently, I'm not as awake as I was.
It's harder than it seems.
It really is. Yeah. Chris Pratt, I just want to let you know that the comment did not come through. I don't know if you're working on it and just having us hold, but I just want to let you know that only your name is appearing here. So if you'd like to put a comment in here, please do so. Monique Armstrong, 255 Pond Street, thank you for your service. We are all navigating the unknown and scientists themselves are still researching and debating the facts. Mask or not should be a personal decision right now, but we should not discriminate between vaccinated and unvaccinated.
Okay, does that conclude it?
Well, Chris Pratt put his name in here, but,
Proposing.
okay,
Okay.
yeah,
That's my,
Then let's give him a shot to do that.
okay.
While we're doing that,
Yeah.
I'll just maybe table set. It seems like there are two issues that we have in front of us. One is the DESE guidance and the other is testing revisions. Correct? Are those, is that for?
Well, no, we're just considering that the DESE guidance
Yeah, well,
issue at this point.
right, the testing, good.
That I felt like that was a fairly operational issue, but if you wanted us to give you any sort of vote, we could. I
Well,
thought
I'm
we
not
were-
looking for a vote necessarily, but I did bring it up for input. And so if there are deep concerns with it, after, consulting with our lead nurse and working in that direction, and hearing all the recommendations, it's my impetus to move in that direction. But I didn't want to do it without some thoughts necessarily from the committee. And if there are strong feelings against it, I'd like to hear them.
And presenting a public.
Well, yeah, that was the main thing. I make sure. I mean, I just got the info, so I wanted to give it out to you, and I wouldn't have another opportunity if I'm going to stick to their timeline to be able to present it, because our next meeting is February 2nd.
So Ms. Caleri, any follow-up comments from Mr. Pratt?
Not from Mr. Pratt.
yes, for
yet.
Mr. Pratt. Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, no, sorry to interrupt.
Tim Davis, 16 Fair Oaks Lane, comment from Mary Lou Sutters, Massachusetts Health and Human Services Secretary, commented last week, masking has not proven effective in places like New York. Mr. Davis? Chris Levisi, 20 Brewster Road, point of clarity, is DESE recommending both that schools mask even if they are threshold communities and that in those communities unvaccinated can unmask?
So DESI is sticking with their threshold allowance for 80% that are allowed, and they make it very clear that it's a local decision. We're going to go in that direction. But now they've shifted their language from requiring, and this is, again, remember now, there's two separate things at hand here. There, and this might, I appreciate this because it does give me a chance to clarify. There's the mask mandate, which for anybody but a threshold building that has been approved by a school committee applies to everyone, vaccinated or unvaccinated. So if you're not at 80%, your school committee, Board of Health, have not determined that it's okay for you to go in that direction. You're masked. But from a threshold perspective, DESI is allowing it, and they're making it very clear to be a local decision. And they've shifted their language from requiring, if you do choose this as a local decision at an 80% threshold school, they've shifted their language from requiring unvaccinated folks to mask to highly recommending that they mask. So they're no longer saying, if you decide to do this, then you absolutely have to vaccinate your, you absolutely have to mask your unvaccinated. They're now saying, if you choose to do this, we're going to highly recommend it. But that obviously now becomes, if you want to be more restrictive, becomes a local decision, potentially.
Right, and I think I'm gonna confuse, because I said no state or local health organization or administrative agency required mask mandated schools, but I was speaking about schools with, we are an 8% district. So
The Board of
that's what
Health,
I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So there's been no mandate for two school districts that have reached that
correct.
level of vaccination, and that's what I meant, so
And-
maybe I confused.
I can understand. And DESI does have the option, obviously, to say threshold schools, stop. Mask all your kids. Our own Board of Health
That's what I mean.
has the option to say, even though they're clearly recommending something, to say, stop,
Right.
mask your kids. And I think what your point is that no one has done that.
Right, and I think I may have confused, maybe that gave rise to Mr. Pace's concern, I don't know.
That's it. Chris has not repopulated the Q&A.
Right?
There wasn't?
Okay.
I thought you said there wasn't.
In the corner of my eye, saw another Chris,
I
and
see.
Mr. Levisi, and I just,
Okay.
so many Christophers.
All right, so we're right on schedule here. Is there a motion on the floor?
Sure, I'll make a motion to approve Dr. Sullivan's suggestion that we move to DESI's guidelines that we strongly recommend all students vaccinated or not vaccinated to wear masks.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor to adopt the current DESI guidance as it applies to 80% districts.
Yes.
Is there a second to that motion?
Can I just, a point of clarity, I think we want to be very specific with how we articulate this, because part of the reason that potentially we're here is we didn't anticipate a change. We voted very specifically last time for vaccinated individuals. So I just want to make sure that we're very much in tune with what we're putting up as a vote, and it's fine if you do that, but I don't know that we deeply considered that last time we recommended a vote. I certainly didn't think of that
Okay, so
way.
Dr. Sullivan, why don't you put that memo right up on the screen again? So we had the language right in front of us, because that, I think, is what captures what Mr. Kieran is trying to
Yeah.
move, and then everyone's understanding what it is.
And I'm not saying we didn't just do that. I just want to make sure of it as
It's
a
the
team.
red lettering, okay? So basically, and Mr. Kearney, correct me if I'm wrong, but my
Exactly.
understanding is that you've just moved to adopt this guidance here, where as we are an 80% building,
Right.
Cohasset Middle High School,
Right.
that we can make masking optional for both vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals. However, it is highly recommended
Highly recommend.
that all individuals wear masks,
Exactly.
or that unvaccinated students wear masks.
Yeah, this is highly recommended.
Yeah. That unvaccinated students. Is that correct? Is that what you were, is that captured?
That's
Is that right?
exactly,
Okay.
exactly the DESI's updated guidelines.
Okay.
for the mask.
So I think that's clear. So is there a second to that motion?
I will second that.
That motion's been seconded by Mrs. St. Ange, and we will take a vote in roll call. Mrs. Colery.
Aye.
Mr. Dial.
Aye.
Mr. Kearney.
Aye.
Mrs. St. Ange.
Aye.
Aye, Craig McClellan. So that motion unanimously carries, and we ask you to please implement that. Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. Okay, does that conclude the superintendent? No, it does not. There's another item on the superintendent's report.
There is, so it's my mid-cycle goal review. It seems like climactic now, right? So I'll put a document up here so we can, I did share with you a document that has a lot of linked evidence. Hopefully you had a chance to look at it. I'll be going through that today, but I won't be stopping and talking about every single piece of evidence. It's just too much, and it would be a real trick through Zoom. But I will be able to discuss anything that you want to discuss. And of course, the point of the formative is to get a feeling on where the direction I'm moving, and if there's something that perhaps I'm not focusing on that I should, to hear your thoughts on that. So I'll share the document, and I actually did add a couple things to it to, bear with me for a second. I added a couple things to it just to show where we were in the cycle. So once again, there are a number of cycle steps in the superintendent's evaluation, some of which we've already concluded as a team here. I did submit for your review the self-assessment, and I did set goals, which is step 2, and develop a plan. Did it first with the subcommittee, and then I did it with the work that through with the school committee, and did make some of this being school district improvement goals, really in conjunction with our strategic plan, which was a big part of it. So cycle 3 is collection of evidence, and the collection of evidence is what I submitted to you in linked form, and you have that document where I've collected evidence regarding all of my goals. And like I typically do, I just also talked about the standards and gave you some examples of some of the work I've been doing in the standards in the document you have, which I'll review a little bit here. But this is where we are. We're on step 3. The superintendent implements the superintendent's plan with assistance from the committee as appropriate. School committee members and the superintendent individually collect evidence of progress on goals and performance against the standards. And that brings us to where we are right now. Step 4, at a mid-cycle public meeting, which is this meeting, the superintendent reports on progress being made on the goals in the superintendent's annual report. The school committee reviews the report, offers feedback, and discusses progress and possible mid-cycle adjustments with the superintendent, leading to a conclusion with our end of the cycle and summative evaluation reports, which again is a public meeting. And you're able to, this time, not only give me feedback on the standards, but on the goals, but also to give me feedback and ratings on the standards, which you've done in past years. So I'm going to go through this, which really focuses on the goals, just to refresh everybody's memory. I will move quickly, but if you want me to stop and make a point of clarity and actually dig into any evidence or questionable evidence, I can certainly do that. Dr. Scollins, who has very similar goals, will help me out on some of them, and perhaps Sue Owen also will help me as I get to some of the particularly goal number 5, which is some of the operational goals. So the first goal, just to read it to everybody, is throughout the 2021-22 school year, I will empower staff and students to embody equity, cultural responsiveness, inclusivity, empathy, and global citizenship through providing professional development, timely feedback in the area of culturally responsive teaching, through creating increased knowledge for students regarding diverse cultures, and through increasing the inclusivity of the school environment. You can see some of the key actions here, and the benchmarks actually get into the timeline regarding these. The key actions, the inventory ways we connected to a broader learning community during the pandemic, create plans at each building to continue to enhance the use of technology to increase connection to the global community, to create a district-wide strategy for recruiting a more diverse staff, to begin to implement this strategy, to implement culturally responsive look-fors in leadership learning walks, to continue to provide professional development that fosters culturally responsive teaching methods, and then leadership providing frequent feedback to staff regarding the efficacy of implementing culturally responsive teaching, And then finally, to establish a format for students to learn about diverse cultures and to increase inclusivity of the school environment. Some of the benchmarks that we established together is, number one, evidence of discussion with leadership staff and community regarding effective use of technology to increase connections. What I provided for you here is a list of some effective technology measures during the pandemic that was created by a leadership team. This took off at our retreat, which was here in the beginning of the summer. And you hopefully saw, when it was fresh on our minds, what technology techniques would be productive and would be implemented. Evidence such as the poly is on there, and ways we could further implement that. And then I gave a list of some of the collaborations by our newly formed website management team, which is comprised of our new hire at the middle and high school, Lindsay Kay, who is doing a great job with our middle school and high school, helping guide that type of technology, professional development and services for our staff, just as Cassie O'Brien at our elementary school has always done, all kind of triangulated by Lisa Radden. So I provided some of that communication. And also, of course, we have our own team here who's looking at making our website more effective for communication purposes. That comes in a little bit further. We have not yet, this is one of the ones that I have not yet done, and I had hoped to have done, created a strategy per se for more diverse staff. We do have a grant that we're applying for that hopefully will give us some knowledge in that. I know Elisa Gittens Carl and Dr. Scollins are looking at some meetings coming up
And we have a
to
webinar, yeah,
next week.
that's
to-
gonna help hopefully give us some ideas about how to recruit and retain staff,
Yes,
you know, of a diverse background. So, hoping.
we've adjusted some of our language in School Spring regarding when we do put language out there to prospective employees, showing how important our view is and how paramount it is regarding making our culture diverse and inclusive. And of course, you can see that all through our strategic plan. And again, as we click, I'm not showing this to the public, but if you click on any of these, you see all this evidence. So these are all hyperlinked. I'm just not getting into them unless the committee wants me to because of the depth of it. Evidence of implementing the strategy, again, where we need to have a strategy first before we can implement it, but that's a part of what I hope to put into play in the second half of the year. We do have a culturally responsive list of look-fors and evidence of implementation and learning walks. We just did one today where we go into classrooms and look for certain hallmarks of culturally responsive teaching, just in the structure of the rooms and what's present in the presentations, and also in their classroom libraries. Dr. Scollins, feel free to jump in at any point in any of these. And we do have a robust schedule of learning walks. And then in terms of feedback to staff, we have now completed all of our schools a learning walk. And I did not include the memo in here for the middle school because we just did this today. But we did have robust learning walks at Osgood, Deer Hill, and the high school, all of which included feedback to staff from the principal at faculty meetings regarding what we saw in terms of culturally responsive teaching. Professional development that fosters culturally responsive teaching. You can see a list of professional development activities that include support for staff in this. We've been working on this for some time, but you can see it really taking shape. And then having more targeted professional development on March 18th.
Yes,
Just
so,
want to mention that at all their
Yeah.
scholars.
so we've started the plan for that, looking at how we can address some of the questions that staff have had, really around how do they have those more difficult conversations? How do they make sure that everyone feels safe, that they can share their thoughts and their views? And they want to make sure that when they're having the conversations that they're doing them the right way. So So actually today, Lisa Gibbs, Carl and I met and talked about who are some experts that we could bring in to help and how do we create a day that is very purposeful for the staff and allows them time to collaborate and talk and work together. So we have a few ideas and I'm knocking it around and we're excited about the day. It's always a nice day to have that full day for staff.
Yep, it's a good dedicated day for that. Again, more evidence about the learning walks and some of that overlapped a bit. Some of the things I'm really proud of are, in addition to our work with CASEL and the framework, and also responsive classroom at the elementaries, really to see the work that we've shared in the past on the inclusive culture survey at the high school, and now our peer assessments that you saw in play from our presentation at the middle school, where they're really looking at making sure everyone's included and looking at strengths and weaknesses in our own school culture. That's also happening at the high school now. So you can see the sharing of resources is happening. And, some basic things we needed to do, which was revising our non-discrimination clause, and then a vision statement of equity, which we created and implemented earlier this year as a staff. So I don't know if anyone has any questions regarding this particular goal. Maybe I'll take it goal by goal. Or if I shall go on to the next goal.
You move right along.
Okay. Next goal was, trouble now, there we go. So the next goal is communication and engagement. And really trying to cultivate an environment of open communication, engagement, and collaborative learning opportunities among school, home, and existing collaborations with families and community, and through creating a plan for and implementing partnering opportunities. So I guess there's two parts in this: making sure that we're open in our communications, that we listen to and incorporate feedback, and that we create a plan for having partnering with our families and with our community. First start of this is, in key actions, is to audit what we currently have for our collaborations. Second is to, that's with the community, to audit our existing engagement with families. We need to know what's present before we can add to it. Partner with the class school committee to host a community volunteer resource forum designed to increase support for experiential learning opportunities for students, which I know is one of your goals. Create a plan at each building for further collaboration with the community. To implement collaborative learning opportunities with family and community at each level. To create a plan for establishing deeper engagement with families. And then to increase the use of committees, which include cohesive families. And that includes increasing the cohesion of communication tools across the district. So, as you saw from this piece of evidence, we do have a current list of collaboration with the community across the district. I'm going to share that in my Navigator newsletter so the community can see that. It's a good exercise in seeing what we have currently so we can make sure we add to it. Making sure that we have plans. We haven't absolutely formalized our plans yet moving forward. That's part of our strategic plan. But you all saw our improvement plans, which do include a real emphasis on family and community engagement. Each of them did, and a plan to make that happen. You'll see that even more when we hit in the spring and those formalized plans become part of next year's school improvement plans. That's right in line with our strategic plan, which really looks at this year as an audit, getting dirty, getting a sense of what we have, and then really solidifying that in the next 2 years. Very, very, I would say, strategic in that way. And again, just as we did with community, there's a list that reflects our plans. And I've also tried to keep the Navigator fresh. This year I've really gone full bore with the Navigator weekly, and I've tried to really emphasize those family connections and those things that we've done with the PSO, with CEF, and with various community groups in my newsletter. So hopefully you've been able to see those as we've gone along. Next, we have evidence of increased family and community engagement. It's still ongoing. We're pulling out of a pandemic. hopefully you're starting to see more engagement with families than we've had in the year past. Clearly, I've been pretty transparent with, I thought this was something we needed to work on anyway. And then the pandemic hit, which put in more emphasis on the fact that we need to work on it. But hopefully you're starting to see more of that. You saw more of an increased input in our holiday concerts, for instance, and you should start seeing more of that as we move forward. And our work with PSO is included in that. And then some of the same thing with our committees, just some of them that are in play, that have family members involved, is our school councils and our website work with family and community input. Teacher resource list, school committee, our comprehensive literacy approach. We're going to be asking for more family input about homeschool connection and some of our, obviously, work with CPAC. We determined we had to get some of our, and you can certainly talk about any of this, we had to get some of our internal work done,
Right.
which involves a lot of training. And then bring in some of our families a little more
Right.
concentrated.
Yeah.
I think our initial thought was we could do that right off the top, but
Exactly.
there's just a lot of training that has to be done.
There is, and as we're really looking at our literacy, I need teachers to be able to work together and figure out what it looks like at that level, and then we can start to bring, like you were just saying, bring families in, but there will be some opportunities to, even for parents and families to give input around that homeschool piece as we look at our approach and how does that feel to them at home.
And then I linked all the newsletters here so you could have them just at your fingertips. Anything you wanted to click in on that, but I really tried to be communicative with those, and hopefully people are, there's always nuggets in there, so if people want to dive in, they can really see what our school's about, what our school district's about, what the individual schools are about. And, our principals are also doing nice newsletters as well. And they get a little more granular at their particular school level, usually. And then it's always good, usually more granular, I should say. This is finally goal 3. Well, there's 2 more goals, I shouldn't say finally. If I'm going too slowly, I can pick it up. But does anybody have any questions on goal 2?
No, I love the navigator. I think you do a great job. I really enjoy it all the time. I try to tell you when I see something in there that really makes me smile. And I was wondering, can we sign up for random school newsletters, or do they only go to student families? Like, could I sign up for Brian and John's newsletter?
To receive it,
Like, you want to subscribe to the listserv?
Yeah.
yeah.
So what I would look for is if you follow me on Twitter,
Yeah.
I
I
always
sure do.
retweet things.
All right.
So anybody who follows me on Twitter can immediately get their newsletter, because they all tweet them, and I retweet them.
Yeah, and they're posted on their websites.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I don't go looking for them.
Right, I know, you want them to
come
be
to me,
deleted.
too, and that's fine. I'll just be a little more proactive. Okay.
Well, if I could, I could link them in my
No, it's
newsletter,
fine.
which is
Sorry.
a
Well,
thought I had.
let's
I don't wanna
address Ms.
derail
Scolari's
this.
insatiable need for school newsletters. We'll do that.
I
Another
don't
time.
think that represents the broader community, no. I think that's a very special interest.
Yep.
Enjoy.
Right.
So again, we've determined we're partnering with teaching, learning. So the next one is, this is a student learning goal, and it's around teaching and learning. And this is focusing the district on improving the quality of English language arts and mathematics instruction K-8 by offering professional development, which will positively impact student achievement in the areas of ELA and mathematics. And this is a point where I can make it clear that even though the goal is K-8, it doesn't mean we aren't doing other things beyond 8th grade or pre-K, but we're really focusing on this because of our Bridges pilot moving into the 2nd year, and because of our work with comprehensive literacy. We're trying to pull all of that together, which is quite a feat. So we do have some partnership with TLA, providing data analysis on the efficacy of our benchmarking assessments in the area of ELA and mathematics. Seeing a lot more of that in the second half of the year. Creating more consistent data analysis teams throughout the district. Again, as I said, we're in year 2 of Bridges, monitoring student achievement through the use of this new benchmarking systems, and creating more cohesive use of adaptive learning tools in math and ELA, And defining the roles of our reading and math specialists, that should be down below. I'm not sure what it is. Anyway, trying to provide some data for this, and I provided a lot of some notes and some professional development plans with our mini lesson, which is part of our TLA approach to literacy. Here, and then some notes in the planning, and then our comprehensive literacy approach. Anything you want to say about our approach thus far, and then also what we're looking to do moving forward
Sure.
regarding our work with TLA and comprehensive literacy.
Yes, so right now, our work started last spring with Teaching and Learning Alliance, and the consulting group that we work with. They did an audit last spring, and teachers showed a great interest in moving faster than I thought, so we jumped on board, and we were fortunate enough, we had some funding, we could do this. We brought Teaching and Learning Alliance in. They have set up a whole professional development calendar for the year, and it had a kickoff with a full day of training at our full day related to the pieces that we want to address. And then they're continuing to do embedded PD, where they're coming in and working with staff during the class and class time, and they're modeling, and our teachers are practicing, and there's feedback. We also, and that's related to comprehension, conferring with our kids, learning how to set goals and work with students. And that's that kind of comprehensive vocabulary side of it. Foundations is the phonics program we have, but we felt it was really important for everybody to really have more training. Some never got it, some had it, but we had a pandemic, so lots of things happened. So, and we've carried that up through 5th grade, although Foundations is a K through 2, sometimes K through 3. Phonics program is really important for 4th and 5th grade teachers to, 1, know the language, and 2, to be able to have those skills, because we are coming out of a pandemic, so we want to make sure that we're catching our kids if we need them. And that work is continuing throughout the year, and we'll continue our work next year with Teaching and Learning Alliance as we look at all of those components. We're looking at also phonemic awareness. We teach it, but I think there's a need for a more intense program around that, because that's such an important skill that we have to have. So we're looking at those pieces right now, some opportunities. So more as we continue on the road.
Yeah, and I think for both this benchmark that we're talking about and the next one, which is about data and data teams and how we produce data and present data to families, there's some deconstructing that needs to happen.
Yes.
And I think the first half of the year was a lot of that. And I really view that, growth isn't easy, and I view some of the conversations and some of the difference of opinions as very healthy, because it's going to get us to where we need to get with voice. So I don't want people to feel discouraged by it. I want to feel like I want to encourage people to continue to voice their thoughts on that.
Absolutely.
Our goal is to pull all this together so that you have a really good sense of, first of all, what data should you expect as a family for your child, in literacy, in mathematics, for reading. What should you expect, and what consistent approach should you expect in us delivering it to you? That's something that's really important to us, and we've gone head first into this, and a lot of it has to do, obviously, coming off of the pandemic. Folks have a concern for where their child is. I get that. It, in some ways, dovetails very nicely into what, just like, all right, look, if I were to say a couple things that we really needed before the pandemic, and I have, to be the best school district in Massachusetts, which is our goal, which we can absolutely do, is to look at families and our engagement with families, and to look at data, and to be able to provide a sense of data to our families so that we can, as a team, families and staff, leadership, move forward addressing those areas that really need addressing, both holistically and individually. We needed that before the pandemic. The pandemic came and we needed it now like times 10. So we get it, okay, and we understand the passion, and we're really trying to circle the wagons to do what was a task before the pandemic, and to do it with the fact that we all know that we need this data to continue learning. So we're really trying to build the plane and fly it at the same time in some respects. But it's a year-long approach, and it is gonna, come
It
to
is.
fruition as we go. So
Right.
you can see some of the notes we have here regarding the way we're working with our department heads, the way we're circling professional development in math and literacy at the elementary level. And then how we're looking at some of our important data points. MCAS is not the only data point, but it's an important point, and it can guide us. It was a little harder to anchor to it this year, but
Right.
it's still a good data
It's
point.
still a data point.
So I'll let you again talk a little bit about just
Sure.
where we are, where we're going
Right.
with that as sort of an overture of
Yeah.
where we want to do.
Thank you. And I think it's really important, that conversation around data and the understanding that families want data on their children. Your teachers are always giving you information and feedback. One of the things that has to happen is though that teachers need to have a more consistent way of talking about data. So they all talk about data, but they talk about it in different ways. And so if there's ways that that you can work together so that everybody is delivering information in kind of the same method. Everybody has their own style, but there's a way to look at data and there's a way to analyze data. And so we have to do that work with our teachers. And that was one of the reasons why at the beginning of the year, I said, we're really not going to send these reports home because teachers don't know how to talk about them yet because we're just giving out this assessment. But looking at not just that data, but all our data and pulling it together in a way that makes sense. So we're going to do some work with leadership around what we call data dives and data analysis. So we have to teach them how to do it first. Then we bring it to our department chairs and then our teachers. And at the building level, then the principals will have a bit of a protocol, I would say, for how do you dive into data. And so those are some of the things that's happening, but it's not happening in a consistent manner in all the buildings. So those are the things that we're doing this year to shore that up so that make sure that we are having the same conversations about data and that everybody understands what we mean when we're saying we're going to do a data dive. What's our objective in this particular data, and then how are we going to talk about what's our protocol. So those are the things that are happening. We started that we started before the pandemic. And that was really kind of that first experience with, for teachers to understand how to even just look at MCAS data and how do we break it down and how does it inform our decisions in a consistent manner. We're using it before, but how are we using it as a district to be consistent? And then so that's going to happen over the course of this year. In addition, we've added learning walks for the department chairs. So they're going to have their first experience doing a learning walk, which will encompass our look-fors. But that's also part of these data talks. It allows for them to have the experience of the leadership is happening. So they'll have the same information as they move forward and moving to our data talks. So in addition, we're looking at all the assessments we are giving K through 8. Right now, 6 through 8 really just has iReady as a benchmark. There's lots of other benchmark assessments that happen K through 5. So we're looking at all those to see what is happening. So we had an assessment team meeting earlier. We're having another one at the end of this month to look at what is happening. What's the overlap? We don't want to assess our kids, but we still want to make sure that we get comprehensive. So by the end of the year, we'll know which benchmarks are going to stay. We'll have a better sense of iReady. And then we'll have determined what way we will send home that data
That's
to
right.
families. There will be a temporary solution. We felt that
Template.
the template of sorts that will go home. We're also going to work on that too. I've already spoken to our reading specialists and principals and talked to the math specialists in next week. And the assessment will say, okay, so how will this feel for families? How will this feel for teachers? And how do we get this across? Again, conferences are the best place to get information, but also picking up the phone, sending an email. Teachers will always talk to you about where your child is at.
Excellent. And then just, I'll move like more swiftly here, but this data team plan and timeline I will share in the Navigator. I think it's good for people to see that. I'm not going to open it up now, but you've seen it. We do have one. Again, more professional development, and then Dr. Scollins continues to do yeoman's work working with our math specialists and our reading specialists. And again, this is all evidence right here of iReady, which we have now training folks in.
Mhm.
We have evidence of the assessment team here. It's nice to see this because sometimes we can get locked into thinking, we're just talking about COVID and masks, and we have to do that, right? But there's a lot of great work happening every day too. And it's good to see some of this. Actually, a nice exercise for us to put together the evidence, which we've been kind of accumulating, but to kind of sit down and put it all together was helpful too. Any questions on this goal?
And you'll put the timelines in the navigator?
I think the timeline and the list of family collaborations would be nice for people to see. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. And I think this is.
Anything else? Two more goals.
So Dr. Sullivan's related to that. So there's a question from one of our community members relative to goal 3.
Oh, okay.
Casson year 40 Red Gate Lane, is TLA working on just assessing and building out general education ELA curriculum, or are they also evaluating tier 2 and tier 3 ELA intervention curriculums?
So they did an audit, which is different. They're not assessing anymore. They did an audit to help us understand where we were at and looking at what teachers' desires were around ELA. So it's a little bit different. It's not necessarily assessing, it's an audit. So their work with us is actually just the professional development side of it. They are provided professional development in that whole day that I said in October, September?
It was
October.
October.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And so, and that was related to different topics that the teachers were interested in. Then they are doing the foundations training for us, then the embedded professional development around teaching good strategies around teaching the science of reading and teaching reading.
And that is,
So that's what they're,
I can't emphasize that enough. Like,
Yeah.
this is embedded PD,
right,
where these experts are right with our teachers.
Right.
To make sure that they're collaborating to provide the best instruction possible for our students.
So-
That is so valuable. This isn't a one-day thing where they go and they hear someone speak and then implement them on there. This is an expert from TLA working with a student, modeling it, and then watching the teacher do it, then them collaborating. They get to ask questions. This is really increasing our pedagogy and the skill of our teachers.
exactly. So it's not programming. I think there's some confusion. It's not programming, it's teaching strategies. And so we'll decide as a district what resources the teachers will need in order to have our comprehensive literacy program, and that's our decision. TLA is here to help us with the embedded professional development to make our teachers stronger in the areas of reading. And that's
And in
the
that way, they're
purpose.
gonna help our tier 1 and our tier
It
2.
absolutely, it's so, to that point, it impacts tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. However, I will say this, we are looking at the iReady components for tier 2 and tier 3 support, because we have Lexia and we have Dreambox. We have kind of, all these great programs, but where we have the iReady assessment, we're actually looking at those interventions that would support the tier 2 and tier 3. Again, that's programming, different from what TLA is helping with us. TLA is all about teaching strategies and what are the best teaching strategies? How does the brain work? How does it learn how to read? And what do you need to know as a teacher in order to be able to make that happen? So that's what that's about. So it's about skills and strategies, not programming. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions regarding that goal? All right. This one is very apropos. It's about multi-tiered supports. And the idea is that we're going to work, I will collaborate with district and building leaders to create a cohesive multi-tiered system of supports, which will better facilitate interventions for students. You can see the key actions, including establishing the committee, reestablishing, I should say, professional development in MTSS, which is multi-tiered system of supports again. Really training our staff on how to do this better than we're doing it. And that just means we're just trying to improve what we do, of course. And then creating some consistency across the district And that should come into play in total fruition when we revise our DCAP, which needs some revising. And then really at the end, establishing a resource guide for possible tiered interventions. So in a much more articulated way. We do have the members of the team together. I've listed them there for you. We're continually doing this, and Dr. Scollins is working very closely, mainly with Mrs. Sawalkar as the two chairs to work on that at every level, but our principals are very involved. And we've already seen some standardized evidence. So now we have a consistent MTSS letter and a letter that we send everyone regarding the tiers as their son or daughter may need that help. It's a letter that goes out to make sure that, you know, you're involved. And then some of our DCAP is being analyzed and audited as we speak. Any questions on that one?
Just, Dr. if you don't mind, just because Dr. Scollins always was able to articulate this so well for me when she was teaching me what this is, could you just reiterate generally what we're talking about when we're talking about MTSS and the different tiers?
Right, so when we're talking about multi-tiered instruction, it used to be called RTI, response intervention. It's really kind of worked its way over. But when we're looking at our core instruction, really that's your tier 1, every student gets that instruction. And most students can learn from that mode. But sometimes some of our students need a little bit extra. So they would get a tier 2 intervention, which means it's in addition to their core instruction. They may need support, let's say, I'll just start at the elementary level. They may be struggling with decoding their words. We've seen that they're fluent, that they're not able to decode in a manner that we, they're not quite meeting that benchmark. So we're going to give them extra time, and we're going to have an intervention for them. They'll meet with someone depending on what the needs are. And then if that isn't working, we'll up that and maybe change it. But it doesn't happen forever. What happens is we evaluate in a 4 to 6 week period, see if that child is making improvement. At that point, they probably are going through that, the child study group, and they've already been kind of identified when things aren't working. But teachers will do a tier 2 intervention without bringing them to child study, because that's what we do with teachers, right? If a student isn't meeting the way we are teaching it, then we got to change our practice. So we got to figure out what we're going to do for that child. So the way that tiers work is, 1, again, is the core instruction everyone gets. 2 is they need some extra work, and 3, they may need even more doses. And then all along, especially if we're getting into that tier 2, and we've done it a few times, it's not working, we're moving to tier 3. We are definitely looking at isolating why is that child not making appropriate progress, and then it could get referred to special education for testing, or it may, or it's working. We just know we have to just keep that pace with that child and keep all those interventions in place, because we are seeing success. Is that helpful?
Yeah, yes, and just to be clear, different from and not synonymous with an IEP.
Completely different.
Right.
Yeah.
Just so it took me a while to understand it, so I just wanted to make sure we.
But it's the core of instruction and support in building.
Right, and it's general ed. It's what we do for kids
It's
to
a
make sure
general
that
ed
kids
initiative.
achieve.
Absolutely.
And that they're meeting the benchmarks that they need to. And it's really about changing practice and giving additional support in the area of need.
Thank you. Yeah, I just think it might be edifying for people that have never heard the term before to know what you're talking about if they're looking at the recording at some point.
Is
Absolutely.
this document going to be on where your goals are, or is this just for the committee?
This document, I can put this up, yeah, just I could absolutely do that. Yeah.
I've seen your ask how they can access the document with links, because they can't see the information on the link without a direct document. So I just wanted to make sure that we can say that this is going to be available.
It will be available. I'll make it available. We can go through and make sure. that-
Yeah, except I just want to make sure that.
There's a couple of
Yeah.
email-y things I probably want to not put out there for the public, but other than that, everything is.
Yeah, you want to make sure it's refined and the links are pointing to the right places. And so
Yes,
it's not a
exactly.
working draft.
Exactly. Okay, let's see. Okay, so the next one is throughout the 2021-22 school year. This is about facilities. I will collaborate with district and building leaders to maximize effective resource allocation in the areas of staffing, transportation, facilities, learning spaces, technology, facilities, systems. Familiar? Mrs. O? So Establish a district-wide strategy. Again, we're working on that. You can see some overlap here. This is a nice one because I think we're making some ground here. Work with the School Facilities Committee to consider application through the Massachusetts School Building Association for middle and high school.
So to that end, the school facilities committee has requested that we place them on the agenda for the last meeting in March,
Beautiful,
to give an update. So that's already in the works.
wonderful. That's moving along nicely. Continue our technology pilot program and learning space creation. We're looking at all of our learning spaces and our technology within those spaces, doing some excellent work with that. Lisa Radden is driving that. Continue to work with budget and finance subcommittees, which we have right here, to address budget needs regarding facilities. Create a long-term plan for capital funding initiatives. Continue to improve our facilities processes and to explore cost-effective service transportation systems for all students. So the recruitment strategy, again, I talked about that earlier. I can move on. I did provide a presentation to the School Facilities Committee on November 30th, 2021 regarding the state of the schools. I haven't presented it to this committee though. But so that might be something before I put it out to the general public. The committee may want to see it, so we can talk if we want that out there, but that is a general facilities committee to do. I presented in a public meeting.
I think it's going to be accomplished by, I mean, there's going to be a presentation in the last week of March. I mean, as we get into more substantive steps in the school facilities committee, I mean, I think they'll take control of
Yeah.
that element of it.
Right.
So, yeah.
I mean, it's a public presentation, but I
Right.
did present a presentation on the current state of the schools as it relates to potential improvements to our schools, not even just the new school, improvements to our schools. And there's a plan for a statement of interest regarding that. Some continued technology pilot. You can see there's some model classroom design feedback. We have a group working on that at all schools, involves students, involves teachers and leaders. We have more iterations of what we would want in an ideal classroom. That could be for our current classrooms or for any classrooms in a new building that may come along down the road. It's how can we maximize our spaces by adding furniture and by working with our technology. And these are all pilot program presentations. And again, I did mention about the polys, which are in here.
Dr. Sullivan, what is the CDW?
CDW, what's the initials?
And that's the company where that's.
It's the company that's helping work with us to look at all of our spaces. We've done images of classrooms at every level, and they're helping us to try to efficiently design these and what they might look like to be more effective as a learning space. So, for example, if we aren't able to, that's at all levels. So, if we are able in however many years to build a new middle high school, for instance, all of this information will be incorporated in some of that design and the interior of the classrooms. But if for some reason we weren't, and we had some time to refurbish our spaces, this is an effort to make those spaces as meaningful as possible. So,
Pedagogical finish way.
you get it. It's exactly what it is.
Got it.
Exactly what it is.
Yeah, and I'd like to know the name of the company.
I'm looking it up
Yeah,
right
I
now.
just
looked it up. It's CDW government, I think.
Okay, so what they do is basically do the best use for the space.
Based on all of the feedback.
Yeah.
So they work with teachers, so there are small working groups of teachers, administrators, working with Lisa Radden, and it's, it's a whole reflective process and, visioning and dreaming about what makes a good educational space. Not the stuff, but really what's good teaching? And then how do we make that happen? Then you look at the environment.
Right, with also the emphasis of trying to keep as many kids, especially with special needs, inside our own class.
That's correct.
Correct.
Such as hearing issues,
Everything.
autism. They have glasses now that an autistic kid can wear that before he goes in the classroom, it scans the class so that the autistic kid knows what the kid's getting into. A lot of kids won't, want to be in a confined space. However, if they wear these glasses, they tend to know what's in front of them. So
So I just,
I'm really happy to see.
I just clicked on it.
Yeah.
Okay, and, this is obviously Mrs. Radman's presentation to give to you coming up as part of what you asked for in terms of technology. And I'm not going to steal the thunder here, although I am a little bit. But it gives you a little bit of some of what we're doing here. We're looking at all of our rooms, looking at a blueprint for them. And just give you an idea, you know, some of the pilot goals to understand the impact of technology on teaching and learning, to identify the elements of the AV model. Again, this is all about not only the furnishings, but about the technology in our rooms as well.
Awesome.
Okay, so you can really dive into that as you go. Let me go back to mine.
And to your point, Mr. Kearney, it's technology ever changing. So you have to really create your vision of what it is that you want to accomplish. Because by the time you really are able to implement, there's going to be totally different devices, right?
Yeah.
So,
That's
yeah.
great.
And I just clicked on this just so everyone knows, so there is actually things behind here.
That would have been very clever, just.
It was just-
It's made of blue.
No, they're. I just thought it was a good way to collect evidence
Yes,
in our
really well.
day and age, right? You know, and I will have these all printed out in books for anybody who wants to come and look at them.
Well, Mrs. Collier will probably be there.
I only look when it's in my inbox, that's it.
That's the goal, sir.
All right, so then we have, we did a capital walkthrough and we have really sliced this up with our facilities committee, which is made of Lance and Paul and obviously Sue. Okay, I'm gonna keep moving, almost there. Agendas and outcomes for some of our finance and facilities committee meetings, which we have. And then we also meet monthly as a leadership team, facilities, which involves our head of facilities, Nick Barati, and Nadeem, who's really his right-hand person in that. And our custodians to talk about the work that they all do and how we can better balance and articulate their lanes in terms of what they do. So that's a really important thing. And we do need to do some work regarding transportation. I have to give my hats off to them. And I also very much appreciation of families who are dealing with some delays. I get that, but we're making it work in the short term. And I don't know if you have any update regarding where we are with bus drivers. Have we made any progress in that? Mrs. Owen?
No, we've had several applicants and actually a few qualified that already have their licenses. And then we had one come in last week that we really thought was ready to go and his company offered him more money to stay. So that's kind of what's been happening because they're scarce right now. You can't find bus drivers. I mean, you can't find bus drivers anywhere.
So we're kind of where we haven't really progressed much.
No, I mean, we have two people that are starting to go into training. They've applied for their permit, or they're going to take their permit, and they're going to get the DOT exam. And then they have to do 60 hours of training.
Mhm.
So you're talking a couple months out. And we've called all the local companies. We can't find even a substitute. We've even called the National Guard. They can't.
We've had some good thoughts by community members. We haven't, none of the leads have come to fruition, but we're certainly very open for that.
Right.
Can I ask you for, as far as our now, we don't have a human resources director. So that to me is a problem. Also too is the fact that I think that we need to kind of reach the community members to see if there's anybody who has a grandfather or, and I say this because in my business experience, we like to hire members because they have passion for the place. Matter of fact, I just recently hired one of my biggest critics and she now works for us. You know, because she cared that much to complain.
But we'll hire critics.
Did I
If
say
you're a
hey,
critic,
That's legally
apply.
don't drive a bus. That's why you're a school committee member.
Yeah.
Hey, Paul.
So-
Oh my
God.
No, it's like, I would have passion for that, but that just doesn't qualify.
I
I'm
could
just
see
not qualified. You wouldn't want me driving
I would,
that.
All right, back to the goals?
yeah.
Yes.
So I think we've wrapped it up. I think that was the last bullet,
Well,
so.
that is, and I just want to show, I don't want to interrupt the word.
No, well, maybe there's some questions about goal number 5 and then we'll see what we have.
Yeah, let me just show you what else I have. I'm not going to go through all these at all,
Okay.
because it's not even part of the review, but I want to make sure you know that I am thinking about the standards as well and the indicators, and I did put down just some evidence regarding just, again, evidence in word only, but just to show you some of the areas I thought I was meeting all these, and, it goes for quite some time, so I will stop, but you can see that it does progress down. Hopefully you had a chance to look at it, so.
Okay.
Any questions on goal 5, and then I'll open it up to any comments, so.
No comments from the community. I don't think any questions. Formative review, not cumulative, so,
This is midway through,
okay.
or thereabouts.
I think we asked the questions as we go around, so I think we're good.
Great job. I have one quick question.
Oh.
Given that and all the work that you do, communicating with the community, all the navigators that you publish, when do you find time to sleep?
He doesn't.
He doesn't.
No, it's actually when I see my kids, I'm like, geez, you grew like last night. He's like, Dad, it's me, Liam. It's not Cooper. So, no, it's, I mean, it's a labor of love. We talk about it all the time. There are times when it's not love, but we are working hard to try to, do the best we can. And I appreciate your thoughts about it, but it really is, there's nothing that I would want to do more than to help kids and, so I appreciate the
I
thought
say
of
that
us
by
working.
recognizing
I know.
the amount of work that you
Thank
put into these schools. I just want to say we appreciate that.
Thanks for saying that. And same goes for
Dr. Collins.
Josh Collins and
Zella.
Sue and Barbara and
Sure,
everybody.
okay.
Yep, and everybody that works.
Really
Okay.
good floor,
Yeah,
Matt. I must
Are we
say.
going around, or we just?
We're gonna move on.
I just have a couple of comments.
Okay, you're here, you're a member, you get to do that.
I appreciate that. No, goal number 2, community engagement.
Yes.
I do love that we're focused on that. That is a big challenge in this town sometimes. But I'm very encouraged to see such as sports and children going down and watching the varsity game last night and seeing the kids play during that. I mean, these are the things that I think that we are, as a district, are in the right place as far as right from Osgood all the way up. So I do see that, and I love that you're working on that. The other thing that has been part of this district, which we've been trying to talk about, is diversity in staff. And I think it's important, especially Medco kids, to see somebody that looks like them. And I was wondering that maybe when something comes up for a job position, a teacher, then maybe we should contact Medco and try to see if we can engage some kind of former students.
Yeah.
I've heard former students, again, back with the passions of wanting to teach for us. So I think when something comes up, maybe we can work with, maybe trying to find some.
We would love it. We would love it. I'll let Dr. Collins talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, and Lisa Gibbs-Carl is definitely working on that component because we would love to have students come and be teachers. One of the things that Dr. Sullivan was talking about was there's a grant. Jesse had given it this past year, and fingers crossed they're going to do it again. It does have kind of out of the box thinking around how do you recruit, diverse staff, and especially in communities like that, we're kind of hard to get to. I mean, there's lots of reasons why, it's harder to get diversity, diverse staff down here. But there are opportunities for us to do that, and looking at, and that the grant has some interesting things around helping to provide support for them in school and things like that often get in the way for teachers. So I think, hopefully it will work well. We did a virtual diversity career fair.
Mhm.
out very well for the amount of work we did and everything was like,
Yeah, we didn't put that in there. But,
No,
yeah, we
yeah,
could've- I mean, we try,
we
we're
keep trying,
trying,
it
we're
wasn't
not
successful,
really
yeah.
doing very well.
Well, I think I'm
Yeah.
just gonna say the thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, if we are going to continue to be like an all-white community and like be fine with that, then we're gonna continue to have a hard time getting a diverse staff, and that would be recruiting a diverse staff for the sake of having a diverse staff, right?
Right.
So let's like, as a community, work together to see what the issues are that are being, barriers to us being a more diverse and inclusive community, and I'll just leave that there.
But it is, it is interesting around, and lots of people are in the same place. They're trying to diversify their staff, right? Even if we were an all white, completely white, we didn't even have a METCO program with us, which would be sad, but if we didn't, it's still incumbent upon us to make sure that that we're inclusive in our staffing. So we're just keep working at it. I'm confident that eventually it will happen because we'll find the magic.
And there
We'll
are,
find
of
the
course,
magic
people of
recipe.
color living in Cohasset.
Absolutely.
Yes, there
And
are.
yes, I don't
And
mean
there's
to
culture, yeah.
minimize that. I just mean, it's a community issue, and it would be, I think a lot of people agree that there's work to be done. And I don't want to, I just agree with your point 100%, of course. It's just unfair to be like telling the leadership, you have to have a more diverse staff, but we're not going to do anything to make this a more welcoming and inclusive community. You know what I mean? Like, it's nice for people to commute for 10 minutes. It's hard to commute for an hour.
It is.
So-
And there's, right.
That's the major barrier.
It is,
Right.
and
That's
there's no
major
public,
barrier.
and
So that-
public
Right. So
transportation,
there are
like there are things,
organizations
right?
in our communities that are working to address those issues. And so
So together,
it's all hands on deck.
But I do think there's some ways, and staying connected to colleges and universities, to get as many student teachers as we can here, and we'll keep working. But yes, I agree.
Mr. Kearney, you had other questions?
No, that's it.
Oh, okay. All right, let's move on. Does that conclude superintendent's report?
If the will of the committee, it does.
Okay, well, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move right into the finance update and budget report and we turn the meeting to our Director of Finance and Operations, Susan Owen.
Yeah, if you wanted to share it.
I made you a call, but would you like me to just share it?
No, I can do it.
I can do it.
I should just note, people may have saw me get up and go get water at the, onset of your presentation.
Yeah.
That wasn't disrespectful, because as you know, I have already seen that presentation in its entirety.
I was so focused, I
privately.
didn't even notice.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
no.
but people at home may have noticed that I just left for 10 minutes.
It's also like 90 degrees in here.
I appreciate the water.
Put that, either too cold or too hot, put that on the roof. All right,
Yeah,
let's
we
go.
wanted to make sure that he was on tonight.
It's
I guess they listened to
I
that.
feel like I'm in front of a wood stove.
It's extremely,
Are we ready?
extremely toasty.
We can open
We're ready for you, Sue.
Ready?
Let's do it.
Open those here.
I got a whole pile of stuff today.
I know.
It's a chunky folder. So FY 22 December finance update. We're gonna go through a similar process. As of December 31st, we've expended about 8.8 million out of our 21 million budget. Awarded, we're about 48.66% expended the budget, and we're 50% through the year, so we're still right on target. We've encumbered our supplies and materials. There's a remaining balance of about $11 million, which covers unanticipated expenses and things that are not encumbered. The bigger issue that's been ongoing for several months is suspend tuition. Glad to report that they've stabilized. So I give you we budgeted 1.1, we've recovered 866,000, we spent 746, brings us to a shortfall of about 426,000. No different than last month, so that's good. We're not growing. There's no more unanticipated tuition coming through at this moment. This was due obviously to collaborative tuition went up, private tuition went up. Students were getting placements. We had another student go from a day program to a residential program. Difference between a day program and a residential is, day program can be anywhere from 30 to 60,000, and residential starts at 100 and goes up to $200,000 or $300,000. So one residential child can definitely tip the budget. But it has stabilized at this point. We actually have had some conversations with special ed director and the town about if need be, we can reach out to the state stabilization fund
if we need it, because that's what it's for. I give you a little just budget summary by school, where they're all sitting. So you can see, district-wide is probably 15 points because of special education tuitions. Circuit breaker hasn't changed, but I'm gonna put it out there every month so we can see it. Our capital outlay, so for this current year, the deer handlers and the deer handlers. The deer air handlers in the middle and high school, we had our bid opening, we have to rebid it. Nick and Nadine are still working on finalizing and defining, more clearly what we need. I know the engineers have talked to have said, our $750,000 suggested budget is within reason, and the 1.7 was just a number that he said probably some of the contractors knew it was a big job and just threw out a number to see if it would stick. We can't stick at 1.7. Our turf and track, we're starting the process of bid, going out to bid, because I want that ready to hit the ground July 1st. Wood shop is done, working well. Door fob, they began work during the December break. They ran into some problems, so they're going to finish during February break. The science lab, they're beginning that work. The furniture is here. I believe the plumber is going to come in and do most of the work he needs to do during the February break. And then we'll have the cabinetry and the furniture put in place during the April break. So it's just a lot of it was supply and demand when you get them in. Tile technology, Lisa Wren ordered it. We're just waiting for it to come in. The Chromebook lease, the bus lease hasn't changed. We paid that off right at the beginning of the year. Capital for next year has been tweaked a little, even from what you see here. The only thing that has changed is creating the hallway at the middle high school to access the bathroom. I think we had like 12,000, and when they got some quotes, it was up to about 40,000. The other thing that's not here, but you'll see later on tonight, is I have put a placeholder of the $90,000 for renewing our school bus leases, because right now, we're really not sure if we're going just verbal communication with some of the outside bus contractors. The surrounding companies, which First Students, Locomotion, some other ones, none of them have the capability of taking on another district right now. So I'm a little hesitant not to put in a bus lease. I mean, I know we were going to research the avenue of maybe outsourcing, because we have no place to park them anyways. Right now, I'm not so sure that's the direction we can go, because there's no bus company out there that will take us on. So we're kind of in a holding spot. I'd like to possibly put it out to bid, even though I've had the verbal conversation with the companies, put it out to bid and see if there's an appetite, if we actually fall through with the bid. Really not sure, I need some direction from my subcommittee, my committee, on that.
Yeah, I was gonna add, I also think, given some of the recent events and revealed vulnerabilities of potentially relying entirely on third party, I think we might want to also have more detailed discussion at the subcommittee level about the pros and cons
Yes,
of outsourcing versus.
I mean, it's starting to look like in the current condition that we're in, that if we could find 3 bus drivers, we'd probably be safer staying in-house at least for another year, until the economy picks up, something gets better, but then we're back to where we are.
Yeah.
Electricity summary, this is new for the last month. We're a month behind, we can always get the bills. So this is through November, and it gives you a comparison between the schools and between last year's costs to this year's costs. You can see, we are definitely increased this year, but last year, we went in full year, full time, so that definitely plays a part in it. The gas is down. So,
I mean, we were here, like the
It's not
staff was here
Wednesdays?
full time.
Was it Wednesdays?
we weren't here Wednesdays for a while last year.
Weren't people working from school on
That's my, sorry.
It's your district.
Sorry. So the grants, there's been no change to the grants. I'm just giving you, the opening balances, what the remaining balances. Medco did have a $24,000 increase, which is why I highlighted that in yellow. They just finalized that last week. So we're gonna see an additional $24,000 coming, which is great because our transportation costs are up. Let's see, our revolving accounts, same thing. I'm not gonna go through all of them. It showed you what we started the year with, what we received, what we spent, what's on a purchase order. The accounts that have higher amounts, we are working to reestablish and put back into the program. So for example, athletic revolving, I know was one of the things, so I put a little blurb here that they're making improvements and upgrades. The director of athletics, Steve Rotundi, has gone ahead and purchased some football goals with ground sleeve access frames, multi-purpose net system designed for lacrosse, field hockey, and other sports. We contributed about $12,000 to the upgrade of the Milliken baseball field. The weight room fitness center is going to look at purchasing some treadmills and stationary bikes and upgrading that area. So it's more advertising for staff and students to use. Still ongoing, still, looking at other avenues where things can be improved. Cafeteria was another one that was growing. So upgrades to the website. She's upgraded the website. She's putting in 4 55-inch TVs to display menus and nutritional information in each school. She has purchased an elevator vending machine, which can be utilized for reimbursable meals. It's refrigerated kitchen-made food, snacks, beverages. The kids can actually use their PIN number for the My School Bucks to utilize that machine. It's on a 4 to 6 month wait list, but it's been awarded.
Wait, how many, where's that going?
We're gonna start at the middle high school here, and see how it goes. We'll start with one.
Okay.
See, 4 months.
It's a 4 to 6 month wait.
Just want to make sure my kids aren't gonna.
I know,
that
I'm
changes.
No, I'm not sure, we haven't talked about to the elementary principal about it, because I don't really think,
It's fine.
it's a lot of it's for the after-school activities.
Yep.
Sports
So
and
being
going on.
in the skipper's lounge, and
Right.
I love it, I love it.
New serving line upstairs in this building, or we are upstairs, no, I don't know. New serving line in this building, as well as we're expanding into the room next to it. The other thing that we'll see happening is the high school, we're just about to purchase 2 LED screens for the entrances to the high school. So there'll be one at the front entrance and there'll be one at the back loop, I believe, the back door. At this point, no concerns. We're watching the special education tuition closely, but they've stabilized, which is great. I don't know that it for that.
There's one question we talked about, I can't remember who left it. The generator for the refrigerator.
Pretty much good. Nick is still trying to get quotes for that.
Okay.
But that is definitely gonna happen.
Okay.
Anything else on that?
Yeah, the athletic involvement, I love it. I love the fact that with new training and stadiums, similar to this room being done, I think that it's just as important for the wellness. We talked about staff, the teachers using it, the administrators. Right now, the police officers are using it, the firefighters are using it because they have nowhere else to go.
The waiver, I mean?
The weight room,
Okay,
yeah.
I'm just making sure.
Yeah, and so my question is, being in the industry, I kind of understand how this has to go. The fitness equipment that we would require that room, I mean, also too, is that weight room, as far as the wrestling room, that could be all opened up. So you could, go through the walls and open the whole place up. And I think it's a really good experience for the kids, especially with this, with trying to build up depression. Teachers also, every dollar you spend in physical fitness, you get $5 back in productivity. You're going to talk about less absenteeism for teachers. I mean, I could show you all these studies. my concern is that should we like lease the equipment? Because we could lease the equipment, like, because it's gonna cost at least $125,000, my estimate for equipment. Being the treadmills and the Stairmasters and the ellipticals and the renovation's probably another 100,000. So my question is could we lease the equipment and then maybe go to capital for some of the other, or would the athletics director's budget have enough to handle this kind of project? Because we could also go to the CEF as well, so.
Good question. I mean, it's not, it's not out of the question. We haven't really thought that far. Right now, we're working and trying to move forward in little steps. Definitely has money in that account. I'm not really sure what other ideas. I know he's gonna have a company come in
Yeah,
to give him some quotes. on
Yeah,
it.
that'd be
So
great.
We haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, cool.
I
So,
think it's the
like-
company that you mentioned.
Yeah. And the other thing, the question I would ask is, like, so say if we're buying $100,000 worth of equipment, we can get a 6-year lease or a 5-year lease. So instead of asking for 125,000, every year we would ask for 20,000, correct? So it might be more advantageous to
Well, right, and
lease.
even at 20,000, that's something more sustainable from that, what we want out.
Right,
We would have
Okay.
to go capital for that.
okay. Like I
Police
said,
and
So
fire
there's,
share.
there's lots of opportunities, we just haven't been.
Use that space. I'm not trying to be cheap and, you said the police and the fire department use that weight room as well?
well, that's why if we went and said, okay, it's gonna be 200, like this budget here was 250,000.
Yes.
All of
I
it.
think it's gonna cost about 250,000 to do the wellness center. When I say the wellness center, I'm talking about the gym being knocked down, putting in a high skill, top rated fitness center. Something that Abington High has and all these other schools have. That said, there's a way to ask the police department by going to capital and saying, the police are gonna use this along with the fire department, because they have no place to exercise. And this is a good way, and we could call it the Skipper's Fitness Center, we could call it Classic Fitness Center. And, to be quite honest with you, it's nice to have police officers in the building. And especially police officers that had to exercise, this is something that I think we can go to the town and say, look, what if we found sponsors for 125,000 and you gave us 125,000 in capital with the concern that all the town employees can use it, as long as they use, which we can do because we can do check-in, who's there, because we want to do accountability of who's there, and what time students can use it. Especially, what the thing for me is, to make sure that it's gender friendly, because my daughters can't work out there because it's not gender friendly. It's friendly for the football team, but it's not friendly for a middle school girl or boy or somebody that's not into the football team, because we've seen that, we've experienced that. So the idea that we can build a wellness center for the whole community I think it's great that he's taken that on. So I plan on working with him just to try to help him come up with that, but I would say that the guesstimate to get that to where it's supposed to be is 250,000.
Mr. Karen, can I ask, where are you envisioning that being?
Right where it is now, but the wrestling room, which basically, you look at best use, it's not really a lot of people using it, just the wrestling
So you
kids.
got the weight room and then you have
It's
a
like an
room.
open concept. to
Yeah, and blowing that wall out. And it's, to be quite honest with you, I did donate all the equipment that I had in Braintree to my old high school. And there was a wrestling room right next to the weight room. So this is something I already did in my own high school.
So I'm just wondering, and you're saying it's a $250,000 ask from the town?
I would say if we could go to the town and say a 125 ask, and then we could lease the equipment over a period of 6 years, and then every 6 years we get new equipment because you want the latest and greatest. I mean, this is such good equipment that you can do workouts on it and you can time your workouts.
Right.
And it's so easy the way to set it up too is you do cardio one day, you do upper body the next day, lower body the next, upper body then lower body.
So
And
can
then
we,
we count the reps, and you could teach kids how to exercise through these machines.
I mean, it's irrefutably, a positive change. I'm worried obviously about the fact that right now we're talking about a massive district improvement project, which would be like probably like I don't know, $150 million ask. Right? So would it make sense to focus more on the equipment, less on the actual space?
Well,
at that juncture, because, because the
Maybe
equipment can be,
moved to a different
Right.
building.
right,
well, you could move the equipment, as far as the spacing goes, if you divide it even by 5 years, saying that the new school, if we get the new school. You're not, it wouldn't be a lot of money, in other words. The lighting's fine, the floors are fine, you might need some flooring. It might, even if you were to open the doorway a little bit more, but the bottom line is that if you could have a wellness center that the whole community could use for the next 5 years for 250,000, it's still very inexpensive, seeing that so many people would be able to use it. And to your point, you can take the equipment with you if we get a new building.
yeah, that's why I'm just saying, focus on the
Yeah.
on the equipment itself rather than the space.
Yeah.
But, you've said it before, and it is true. I mean, just because we're considering, let's just say that the new school, we've had a town meeting, everyone's on board, we want to do it, right?
Hmm.
Well, that doesn't mean you just stop everything at the existing school and everyone, just let the
Right.
thing fall into,
Right,
complete disrepair.
right.
But that said, I
Right.
think we do need to be fairly measured on
Right.
any sort of capital.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Maybe we
improvements,
paint
so-
it and make it, you gotta make
That
it.
sort of stuff makes a little
yeah.
bit more sense, it's
Paint
more
makes
rubber
sense.
mats, like flooring, like
Yeah.
things like that, but the equipment, I think, would be the best allocation of resources.
Baby steps, we're starting, we're starting.
I'm going to propose, Mr. Kay, that we take this and put it on our standing agenda item for our subcommittee meetings. And then we can take that, work with Ms. Owen, and then come back to this group with a more spec'd out proposal as to where we want to go.
Good stuff.
Great. Next, capital. So we have to prioritize capital. So we need to decide what's, even though, it's all important, but what is definitely something we have to do. Any ideas on how to prioritize? I mean, school bus lease, you can see I put it right at the top. Wasn't on my memo because this has all been just evolving over the last week or so of lack of bus drivers.
So this is 2023. We already have AC going. My concern is too, being this up now, we're gonna be in school in maybe in July.
Illegal, not that
I'm kidding. I'm just bringing something
No
up.
teachers will be
And,
there.
and Sue, as you know, it gets hot in these buildings.
It does.
So this doesn't have to be required. We already have the money in the bank to fix that.
We have-
500,000.
Yes,
Okay.
that's
So-
for this current year.
Yeah, okay, so I just want to emphasize that, the faster we can get that going. The better.
Yeah, well, that's the one that went out to bid, and it came in at 1.7 million, and we only had 750. So now they're going back out to bid, they have to redefine what we were looking for, be more specific, and see if we can get someone to come in with a budget. Otherwise, we're gonna have to go back and possibly add to this capital to say, we can't do it without another.
So Sue, is it our goal right now to prioritize
We have to
this list?
prioritize this, so I can send it off.
I have some input. Replacing the code base in the gym entryway, I feel like can go pretty low on the list for a couple reasons. I don't think it looks that bad, and also it makes more sense to do the tile floor first and then the code base. Who doesn't replace a floor first before doing baseboard? I just don't understand that. So let's put it at the bottom of the list. And then if
I agree, because I don't even know what a code base
it's the
is.
sticky baseboard. Instead of wood,
It's the baseboard.
It's
It's
The vinyl thing,
It's vinyl. It's hideous.
To the
It's
bottom.
like,
it's the gray thing, right here.
Bottom.
why would you do that before doing floor? It is,
Yeah, so we
I don't know
can,
what
yeah, I agree with it. I agree with you. I think that's, like I said, like.
I don't know why I feel so passionately about that.
That's okay,
It's
so
just-
can we start?
You need to start.
At the top, what is that, what do they have to have?
Ms. Owen, are these in any order,
No.
or have you taken a cut at prioritizing these at all?
Probably,
Putting the bus lease
personally,
something.
probably in my own mind, yes, but I really haven't. I have my thoughts, like the cold base, I hate to say the 15 passenger van for athletics.
So we have 16 items.
I mean, asphalt needs, that's really DPW, we keep asking for that, and it doesn't happen, so.
This is in the front
Yeah, and
folder.
that's,
I'm
Did you
putting,
just count 16?
I just did, did you?
Wow, I didn't, I counted 15, but I
But
got
did you
C straight
include
right now.
bus lease, question mark, 90,000?
Yeah, the bus lease is on.
I didn't include that. So why don't, it might be easier to just create 4 tiers at first. We can just make 4 groups of what we think is really important, pretty important, important, less important, you
Yeah,
know?
put a tier,
Just
I
a
would do a
group,
tier.
like 4 tiers, so we can group 4 together, like what 4 does everyone think are really important? Because I think it'll be really difficult to go 1 to 16 right now. And then once we get the tiers, we can
Yeah.
maybe help narrow down which ones are numerically most important. So what 4 items do people think are the most important here? I think bus lease is fairly obvious,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's a
Bus
must.
lease.
So that's
Well-
not even a want, it's a need.
Well, that's if we're gonna do that.
Well, she was saying earlier that there's no companies that can even take us on.
Right.
So-
I mean, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I would like to go out to bid now. For
Well,
July 1 start and see if there's an appetite, see if someone bids. Verbally, when I've contacted them, they all say we can't do it right now because we don't have any drivers.
We should definitely buzz that. But I guess one substantive question, is this the right group to do this? This seems like something that, Dr. Sullivan, your leadership team might be better positioned than at least me to give recommendations on where these fall in the priority list.
in the past, we've done it with the facilities and finance. So
I
it's,
think we should probably maybe have another president.
Okay.
facility
We'll have
meeting.
everyone,
And then we
What
can,
time?
because there's a
I
lot of
think it
stuff.
makes sense personally.
Yeah.
Sorry, I
Why don't we
mean,
dive into it there?
dive into it, we'll dive
And
into
then
it.
come back to you guys.
What is the timeline on this? I was under the
Well, I think it's
impression
pretty
you-
aggressive.
That's what I'm
That's the
saying, yeah.
problem.
yes.
Do we have the time to do that? Like, in other words, you know,
Yeah, when does this due?
that's what I was presupposing that this is necessary to do now. Because otherwise, I absolutely
Do we
agree.
have a couple of
with
weeks
Mr. Dial.
can we present back at the next meeting? Because this is,
That I'm not sure because usually we don't get much notice of your own capital agenda next Monday night.
Jeez Louise.
Can this be reported back to the committee? Does this need a committee vote or can this be reported to the committee as?
Oh, no, it doesn't need a vote. It doesn't need a
Doesn't
vote.
need
It's
a
just
vote?
kind of prioritize.
Why can't we just bang out the 4 tiers and then
Yep.
Susan, and then Mrs. Owens' department can sort of figure out the individual priorities?
What, this bathroom? How many, bathrooms?
So the bathroom, is at the middle school?
Yeah.
So right now, in that area of the nurse's office, there are 2 bathrooms in the nurse's office in the middle school. The concern is, there are no gender neutral bathrooms anywhere in that area. So they're thinking of closing off one of the bathroom walls in the nurse's office and opening up that bathroom by opening a wall in the hallway. And that's-
and it's not, that, it also has some other positive, that it would be another bathroom that a lot of people could use, that they wouldn't have to travel further, correct?
Yeah, so the middle school staff would
Right.
have access to a
Right.
nearby bathroom, and then
Right.
students who need a
Right.
gender
Yes.
neutral bathroom.
Yeah.
would be
That's gonna be high.
From our
That's- yeah.
facilities tour, I feel like all of the, like
Nurse-
the nurse's office
Yeah.
entrance
Yeah.
stuff
Very
Yeah.
important.
that were super important, and then the locker mechanisms, like, we need the kids to be able to use their lockers.
Absolutely, absolutely, yep, so.
Yeah,
I
so the
agree.
AC heater split and locker mechanisms, we agree, right?
AC
Should be
heater
one.
split in
this
nurses'
is-
office, in middle school health
Okay.
clinic,
Install AC.
Yes.
That's tier 1.
and then the bathroom access.
Yep.
Well, there's 4
I also
guys.
think- I also think that we have to have, if a frontier would be, if you come back and the $750,000 is not enough money. I think that priority has to be, since it's already funded, that we have to fund another amount to get it done. So I think that's a top priority because we won't get the AC if we don't. I mean, if we're.
That's not even on this list.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, but what I'm trying to say is that it almost should be on the list as a top priority, because without even putting a number next to it until we get that number. In other words, if we get funded for 500,000, but it costs 750, now what do we do?
Right.
So if we put that as a priority, because it is a priority because it gets so hot here. Kids can't learn, so.
And,
I-
and in a health clinic, you need air.
Yeah,
That
oh,
is
yeah,
a basic. Like,
yeah, yeah.
a basic.
How bad is the scoreboard?
It's the original scoreboard and it doesn't, support all the sports that are on the field.
All right, so let's put that on 2.
2.
Yes.
I was looking at
And
field lights.
field lights on
scoreboard,
Is there
2.
anything else here that directly relates to like education or,
Those safety automatic
safety
window
au- that
shades.
seems-
I think that should be a 2.
Yeah.
I feel like there should be a 1. I'm putting 5 in the 1. 2.
What do we, I only have the bathroom and the high school clinic, the health
Look at the screen,
clinic.
Sue's putting.
I got the lockers, AC split,
Oh,
hallway,
oh.
bus leads.
So
All right,
the 2 leases are a no-brainer, like the Chromebooks lease. Yeah, I mean, it's a have to, we do it every year. The school bus lease may or may not happen.
Right. Maybe we take 90 off, right?
Maybe we take 90 off. I would say like the safety windows and all, the safety shades and all,
Yeah.
good.
Yes.
It's definitely on there.
Yeah.
How about a 2 for the middle high aging zones? Those are like communication.
Yeah, what is that?
That's so that the various places in the middle and high school can hear the announcements clearly.
Oh, yeah, you can't hear nothing. Right?
It can be, it's a little blurry,
So
and
that's-
sometimes you
Is that more
hear,
important than the replacement furniture?
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like just basic
Safety.
daily communication and safety.
Yeah,
Can't hear anything.
safety.
3 for
Make
sure.
sure.
Yeah, I'll put the replacement furniture
Furniture,
down somewhat. We have a lot of extra furniture, but it's not small.
so put it in 4.
All right,
Yeah,
code base 4,
yeah, code base is a 4.
these down here are gonna go 4, 4, 4.
Every time.
What's the
Field
retiling
lights.
of South of Deer Hill? That's,
Because
Very
the
good
hallways have been
retile.
retiled,
Well,
and the hallways have not.
Guys, I can tell you, we don't have any 3s.
No, it's like a crispiness of tiles.
Right, yeah, it's,
It's-
oh, it's just they're
Yeah.
old.
They're old and like,
yeah,
Probably a stuff.
yeah.
so if that's cosmetic, I'd say 4 on cosmetic.
It's a little bit more, it sounds like it's
I think,
functionality
I'd
too.
say like for the deer, like for like the ceiling tiles and the floor.
I don't even know why the
That
ceiling-
feels more like healthy school environment.
Right.
There aren't a lot of ceiling tiles that are bad at Osgood. I feel like that shouldn't be on there. to
You
be
want
honest
to
with you.
revisit that at your.
All right, good.
All right,
Got it.
good. Yeah.
All right, good. Let's move on.
Done a great job.
Great job. Okay, thank you.
But she's right about it. So, no, wait a minute, no, Lydia's got a good point. Where is the,
Oh, no.
where's the ceiling tiles on that? Because that's definitely,
There is no ceiling tiles on it.
3.
Yes,
yeah, I think that should be moved up to a 1.
But it was the
It's only
floor
20,000.
tile.
they're
So
two
there's ceiling
separate.
tiles
I
too.
mean, they're only, it's only 20,000.
It's not
I
one
don't
of
think
them
there are a
has-
lot of ceiling tiles
Oh.
that are in question.
At Osgood,
Surprising.
it's the Osgood.
I feel like it shouldn't even be on the list, it should just be like a
That's
thing
it,
that we
just
pay.
taken
Maintenance,
care
right.
of.
But we gotta get it taken care of, so then it can be a maintenance item.
Yeah, like that one too, that big ceiling tile and
I
that
mean,
one.
even just walking into Deer Hill for basketball
Yeah.
practice.
Yeah, it's
When
terrible.
Paul and I kick it in the hall at
Yeah.
basketball practice.
Yeah, we
It's
see
like,
what's
oh,
up.
there.
That one is a whole.
That's how we roll.
Yeah.
I don't know how the $20,000 figure came out, by the way.
I don't know, I just think like
That seems high.
some
Sure.
short paper.
It's a
maybe
lot of
mark
ceiling
up.
tiles.
I feel like I could
Yeah. I
bang
think-
it out at Lowe's for like $1,500.
Oh, speaking of
Let's
that,
do
I have a
it.
gift.
Let's do it.
I'm
You
in.
begin?
Just get it
I have
done.
a gift. I
I
have 2
small
gifts.
car.
So do we have to get them sworn in?
Procure them easily.
I did bring my gifts.
Oh, wow.
Oh, it's amazing, Paul.
Do we have to vote
Good for
to
you.
put these
Solar
in?
lights.
I know what those are. Those are the solar ones.
do
Well, hold on a second, hold on a second. We're not even, what's going on here? Aren't we still,
No,
Your
wait.
agenda's being
Sue,
hijacked.
no,
Should you-
All right, I'll just
It's a
bring
lot.
just hold on, Paul.
That could be not
That could be a,
anticipated.
not reasonably, I certainly didn't anticipate that with it.
Oh, I knew you got lights. I knew you got.
I told you I got them.
Google Doc.
Those are some good looking lights.
Just one in Google Doc.
The one that you were working on?
The Capitol?
Yeah. Oh, I see, they're upside down.
Sorry.
I was confused.
What happened?
You said you were all set on that.
I'm not set on Capitol.
Oh,
All right.
So what are we
Yeah.
doing about the ceiling tiles? Aren't those like cheaper and can they just be like,
So I have some
Yeah, but
questions.
there's only 4 tiers.
I'd like permission to look into the ceiling tiles. I don't know how we can have $20,000. I don't, there's not
Let's
that
look
many
into
ceiling
it.
tiles.
Just, that's great.
let's do a
So let's
little
do that.
recon?
But
and
even
get
Nick
we can
said,
get that off.
so
We
we
get that
met
off
with them,
Capitol
Nick
to
had
begin
said
with.
that
That'd
that
be
was.
That's what I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think if we can go.
That's
and
just an
use it-
everyday maintenance.
Yeah, I agree.
All right,
those two
so
It's not accurate number.
Dr. Sullivan, guys, we got,
You
Yeah.
gotta keep going.
Janet, we gotta do this, okay, so maybe you can look into it, we gotta get through, this is a long one, okay, it's hot in here, we gotta get through this, I'm losing my mind. Okay, stop,
I'm almost done.
everyone, we need to go,
So nothing has changed on this budget draft for next year, except for the bad news is, Dr. Sullivan and I met with Christine, the town manager and town accountant, and they are, so this is what we've suggested, this is our roll cost, the have-to-haves and the staffing requests. So we were looking for a 5.85, which I knew was high, to 1.2. And in the yellow, you'll see that the town is offering us a 3.047, which is $660,000, which is a shortfall of about 604 or 607,000 from what we're requesting. We had discussions with them about, being collaborative and coming up with creative ideas. They sent us back to the table to see if we could reduce in some way, and we're gonna reconvene and discuss with them again shortly, I believe, probably.
Sorry, can you bring that down a little? Is there a math specialist in there in the middle school? 'Cause that's-
Yes, there is.
Yeah, that's, to me, that's.
Yes,
more
so-
important. We should raise taxes to do that. That's what we're
Well,
gonna do.
it's on the list.
Miss Zoe, your microphone is coming back on.
Good now. You have malfunctions.
You have that.
Because they're running out of battery.
I know, I didn't get that. I can see it though. It's fine.
The problem with this list is it's not,
There's nothing really on here.
there's not a lot of fat to trim, in my opinion.
Right.
All right, so leave it alone.
Well,
So it's, the time has come, I think, I agree, okay? And Mr. Kearney's been saying this for, I think, as long as I've been on this committee. And he's right. And that's why he's a really important spoke in this wheel. And the schools need to be more of a priority in terms of the budget. We cannot, there's nothing here that we should trim off. And I think it's time that we push back on it harder. There's no reason why we need, this is our school system. I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, look at the things we have on here. These are not like
these are
crazy asks. They're really important, fundamental things that we need.
And they're based on data.
They
We're not
all
just
based on-
randomly asking for this.
That's
So
right. And I'm telling you, Paul Kearney's been saying this since I've been on the committee, and I completely agree with him now. The time has come. You always have. You've maintained that we don't get enough money, and it's not a priority, and it needs to be. Yeah, we're the biggest budget item, but that's because we should be anyway, so that shouldn't be held against us. We're the largest entity in town. It's important. And, we have a community here that really, really places an emphasis on education. I mean, people are passionate about it.
Yes.
Okay, and we turn out good students. We have a living example right here of the level of intelligence that we produce in our school system. And we need to continue to, I'm serious, listen, if you haven't met her, get involved in the conversation with Lydia St. Ange, because she's a really intelligent person.
CHS class of 2001, so.
And that's right, and so, she's living proof of what we have here, and we need to continue to push
Right.
this, okay?
Right. And to
I'm
Craig's
sick of
point-
making concessions.
Yeah, I would just say to Craig's point, the decision makers, and God bless the decision makers, however, they're not asking the community. It should be a community decision if we want to raise our taxes to pay for our kids. It shouldn't be the town managers telling us that, because it's not his concern. We should bring it out to, if we want to bring something and say, we need more money, then vote on it. That's what I'm saying is, I feel, to your point, I feel these school systems been underfunded since my kid's been in the school. And I think that, to your point, these are not unnecessary asks. We're talking about kids' mental health. We're talking about math specialists. And if you want to Lydia's point, if you want the data to show that our kids need this, because in the last 2 years, they've lost a lot of this
Yeah, we have the
education,
data.
then it's our job to bring it to the townspeople and say,
Yeah.
hey, if it's gonna cost you a little bit more to live in town, would you want to put that towards education?
Well, and I'd say, even though, I mean, and I say this in respect to the process, but even over the last few years, the positions we've added, the positions that should have been here to begin with.
No kidding.
Agreed.
I mean, we're trailing behind,
Right.
and it's time to get these positions if
So
we
You're the
want.
computer science teacher that
It's a computer science pathway. We
Ms.
deserve
Madden
that.
was
in-
pushing
in
for
process.
years.
We need it. I mean, we didn't have a reading specialist at the middle school until this
All right,
past
guys,
year.
let's talk about some action steps we can take to make this happen. Ashley, what were you just gonna say?
I was going to say that I think, so it seems to me like $60,000 is a very low salary to bring someone in to a school district that aspires to be the best school district in Massachusetts. which is attainable. and I
The
believe we
step
get paid.
system.
But well, that was my next point. I think what we need to look at is our steps and lanes and longevity and we need to do like an analysis of what it looks like when we hire, I mean, because that, like, whether we want to admit it or not, there are very smart people who are actually looking at.
But we're
this
actually at a
information.
pretty good, we're at a good, we pay a very healthy rate.
It is.
It's very, very,
Right,
very competitive.
So what they're saying is like, every time you bring on a $60,000 staff person, they can only see in 10 years what they're paying to keep those people, which is what we want, right? But like, we have to make the case for this, right? Because every time we go to them with a new staff person, all they can see is post-employment benefits,
FTE.
right?
You're right.
So what we need, I think, is to put Mr. Dial's head together with others, because I think this is the way your brain works, a little bit better than mine. I can help, massage a message and a presentation, but I think we need to like really put our heads together and figure out how we're gonna talk about this. And I think Mr. Kearney's right. I think who we're talking to is the community and not necessarily only the decision makers in town. I think they are definitely an important audience, but I think who we really need to talk to is the community, but we need to figure out what the message is. It's not just simply our schools are underfunded. Even if we agree that that's what the reality is, we need to come up with meat to put on the bones of that.
So maybe that's a communication subcommittee topic.
What I think it's gonna end up being is like
A
a
grassroots
special
movement?
school committee meeting, because it needs to be finance and facilities and communications, and that's more than, that's a forum. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So
Okay.
like at some point in the next month, we should
Yeah.
probably try to
All right.
convene both
Right.
Well, let's do it,
subcommittees.
it's
May I
important.
ask a question though before we move on this way? So a grade 2 teacher at Osgood, is this a bubble grade? We need another full
Yes.
classroom?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, just making sure.
Yeah,
like,
how are we
Yeah,
gonna,
that's-
that's non-negotiable.
We can't
That's
reduce
not-
our grade one because our
Right.
kindergarten's big. You're
Right,
And
right.
our grade two is the
Yeah.
bubble
Like,
for
this
grade
is
one.
Yep.
strictly based on the number
Right.
of students who are actually in school now, which will probably grow because
People move here.
people move here and people who are old
And
might shift to Linden Pond and
So-
sell their house to a family.
My understanding of how this town government works is that our school budget has to land on the warrant at town meeting and be approved by the town. In order to get to that point, we have historically asked for the blessing of advisory capital select board, right? That's how it gets on the
Right.
warrant. I will do some research, but I don't think we actually, like, I think they will just say, like, this was not approved by so-and-so, by this
And then
many
the people
votes.
still vote.
And the people still vote. So,
And then
so
honk and we move.
I will take on the responsibility of getting the process
She's right.
confirmed.
We honk and cohesive.
Okay, so quickly, so grade 2 teacher at Osgood, it's a bubble grade, we literally need another classroom to accommodate the
Educate
students
children.
who are here.
Right,
Who exist. Add 1.0 math specialists at the middle school, we absolutely
Data-driven.
need that, that is, going to understand the data, we need to grow it, look at our scores, look at the math program,
Yep.
the kids are coming out of bridges, they know so much, their thinking is growing, we need to continue that growth. Begin process to reduce full day K fees, we are already beginning that process this year, was that documented, like, is that on the paperwork for this year?
Yeah,
Okay, last year it wasn't. I don't think.
Well, because we didn't vote till after the registrations went out.
Okay, I won't. Whatever. So that's a must do, because it's insane how much people have to pay for kindergarten,
that they have to pay.
that they literally have to go to full day. And full day's like the standard now. Computer science teacher, it's 2022, obviously. Supplies and materials, yeah,
And remember this, what they're talking about is the big increase from our, Sue, help me with this, but the number
The
between,
rollover.
yeah.
So if you look at the very top, the 942,000,
It's like $1 million.
that's the
just for
rollover.
that's just
That's
basic
just a-
rollover.
That's
And that's
just,
not even a lot of money for people.
No, but they're
Speaking
saying
of the
that-
person who just gets basic
they're saying
rollover.
it's more than last year, because last year I think it was 600 or 700. And it real, I mean, the number is what it is.
Yeah.
When I talked to payroll, Jerry, a lot of it is, a lot of the staff, or a good portion of them are now at the very top.
That's
Yeah,
it.
they're moving,
Yeah.
and if they make more money, it costs more money to roll it.
And our top
Good
step
for them.
is
Keep on rolling,
Yeah.
and then, and, you know, when you even look at the scale itself, because I kind of did an analysis of this percentage between the steps. It's like anywhere from
Yeah.
3 to 5 between steps. So, I mean,
And there's a couple of additions that we added in the pandemic, but there was no fat there either. We were low on custodians, right? We didn't have a technology
they brought up the
director.
technology director and the four.
So, I mean, we did add a little bit, but I stand behind those hires as necessary to move the school district. So it's,
Right.
so nothing is frivolous. Nothing.
No.
But in the delta here, we're looking at is 600,000, if I'm reading this correctly.
Right, so that's what they're asking us to trim off of that. So where's
Right,
that?
so we're asking for
Half a million
1.268.
dollars?
They're saying, how about 660?
The only place you can take that from is the steps and columns.
I say no deal.
Moving into a negotiation.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that, and I guess maybe this is, I'll put this as a question. Before we go on to town hall, what is the next step? So as a committee member, I'll say, no, that we need the 660. You know, I'd love to be able to reduce these numbers, but we can't if we want to have an effective school. So if that's the message we need to send back to town or to Christine or whoever it is, let's do that. I guess what's the next step of the process here?
Well, I mean, I think the question becomes, what does he have for revenues and how's he gonna be able to balance his budget? He's gonna start talking about, you know, look, if we need to go on the floor and talk about an override, then that's what we need to do. There's no question about it. I mean, he's just gonna do that.
Mhm.
So that may
Let's
be
do it.
where we are.
And that's why we have votes.
Yeah.
And you go out and you vote. And you know, to like, I was
It
saying
hasn't been
earlier,
over in a long time.
God bless these
Mr. Carey's
people.
been talking about it for a couple of years.
Well, I know, but I remember like when I was
No.
there, it was such a big
It's
deal.
time.
We had a few
Here's
members.
what we all need to know, okay? Look at the voter turnout, look at the town meeting turnout for the last 10 years and tell me who shows up to town meeting. It's
Right,
not
it's not parents.
kids' parents.
Right, unless there's
But,
lights.
but
Listen,
I will say though.
I hear
Except when we
you.
do drive-in at the music circuit. Seriously. if we
I'm
just
just
done that-
saying, we as a committee are going to need to mobilize people.
Absolutely,
We're gonna have to round.
absolutely. And that's what democracy is all about. It's all
That's
about
where
voting.
communication comes
And that's a townspeople.
You know, I bet we get more turnout if we make it about masks. I'm kidding, I'm kidding,
Stop
I'm
it.
kidding. But yes,
We
no,
can do it.
Ms. Collery's correct. This is, but I think we need to hear back from the town, you know,
Yeah,
are there things they can move around? Do they have,
Yeah.
are there other allocations they can make? Is it, you know, but I guess I'd say the message back from this is that this number,
Is the-
1.3 million is a firm number.
Yes,
If
and
not-
that is a difficult pill to swallow.
Yep.
And, you know, as someone who has done a fair amount of digging around in the town budget, like, look at your water bill, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's not like,
right.
you
Fine.
know,
Yeah.
there's not any fat there either.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have to get ready to shop a override around.
And we should be clear because everyone's trying to do their job. I don't want to send a message that, you know, our town government and Chris Senior are anti-education and hate
Exactly.
schools.
That's
I mean,
what I'm
that's
saying.
not, that's
They've
not the
actually
case.
the opposite. They've been-
That's not
There's
the
no
case.
fat in the town budget either.
I'm just frustrated with the fact that we have to make these concessions as a town and we need to do some, so we're gonna figure it out. It sounds like we have an action plan and we're gonna have to just get the message out there where people care
I
enough,
would
we
say-
need to go for that override or whatever it takes to get this. I mean, every year, we trim off of this thing and things like, you know, computer science teachers get pushed off and carried over
Well,
and
But
we
if
just need to
we are,
stop it.
if we are going to do an override, are we going to go mobilize people and we're going to go through that?
Yeah, we're just
My
like looking
proposal
into
is
the-
that it's not for 1.2 million, it's for 5. Because if we're going to go through all the rigmarole of getting all the
Get
parents
everything.
excited about getting the school up to where it should be, let's take it to where it should be
Well,
and not to, I mean, right now, this is the realistic thing of what we need,
Right.
not where we can be.
Right.
And so if we're going to go get the people to vote for, you know, increasing the taxes, let's actually figure out what that proposal is.
All right, here's my suggestion. If you guys want a special meeting, then let's do that and we'll
Talk
figure out when
time.
we're gonna schedule that. And in the meantime, between now and then, we'll all think about different concepts, proposals, ideas that we could talk about it more constructively. Here, we're sort of just flying by night. It's getting late.
Yep.
So if we're gonna do that, let's not have 2 special meetings. Let's
Yeah.
have the special.
Well,
meeting.
I just want to add,
Sure.
and I totally agree with you, because I can only tell you this, being on the committee before, the idea that you guys came to that meeting last year, Sue, that we had the whole full committee there, all of a sudden, the town found some more funds, which I think the power in numbers, so I agree with you. If instead of going as a full, we go as a full committee, because you guys have a lot of good impact than just us three going to them, but it's better as we go as a group.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, does that conclude the finance
No,
report?
no,
It does
doesn't.
not?
I have one added thing at the end, I'm sorry.
Oh,
It was an.
The nurse thing?
So just, I've premised this up, also, you're gonna hear about nurses, we
What
haven't
is
upped our sub rate either, our sub rate's low. So to your idea, Lance, like to be competitive and to really get substitutes in general, that may be something that we have as a ticket item for.
We have actually increased that budget item as well.
Mhm. But go ahead.
what's the additional agenda item? I
It's the
didn't-
nurse
Note in the back.
the back of the blue folder in our.
Oh,
I put it up there.
wow.
It was, so we're having, with COVID, obviously, the nurses are, have been increased responsibilities and having a hard time keeping or finding substitute nurses, with everything going on. So in comparison to the surrounding towns, I gave you a couple of examples here on the towns around. I'm recommending, or we as a team have recommended going from $80 a day for a nurse, substitute nurse, to $160 a day, which is more competitive in the
We
surrounding
only
area.
paying 80?
Isn't that embarrassing?
Yeah.
Well, and we have some low sub rates too. But in order to increase sub rates at like one building, you're talking $40-something thousand dollars.
So we pay $80 a day for subs, whether it's teacher or nurse. So right now, we're just asking for nurse, because we're having a really hard time keeping up with their responsibilities.
How many is that, Susan?
This
How many what?
How
nurses.
many substitute nurses are we getting?
Oh, I don't
We
know.
generally need, like, do we
Well-
keep them on?
You don't,
You need like one solid sub, right?
well, it's fragile. We have, remember, our staffing right now is we have two
It's a
half-time
lot of half-time.
nurses at our middle school sharing a job, basically. And then we have two half-times at Osgood sharing a job, one of which is our nurse leader. We have one full-time nurse at Deer Hill, and one full-time nurse at the high school. I think as a possible like extra position would be a nurse that's also a nurse leader, full-time. And this substitute nurse problem would
Go
somewhat
away.
depreciate.
Right.
So there you go, there's a need. Like, there's a lot of things we could do, to your point, there are a lot of ideas.
What, Mr. Sam?
Now, are we not having, are we paying $80 for a substitute teacher today?
Any sub.
That's it?
Yes,
Holy moly, and we're getting people to do that?
not lately.
Okay, so then I think that we should come back with that as well.
That's okay.
Because
And it's fragile, it's fragile, like if we, you
Yeah.
know, if our nurses start getting ill or something
Right.
happens,
I have no problem with this.
it is a problem.
I think that we should also look at, try to give this substitute, because $80 a day, I wouldn't get out of bed for that.
All right, I'm moving to increase the sub rate for nurses from $80 to $160 per day per the recommendation of administration.
Second.
Most seconded, made by Mrs. St. Ange, seconded by Mr. Dial, all in favor?
Aye.
All
If this
opposed?
becomes a problem with the substitute teachers, I think we should bring this back too.
Okay, motion unanimously passes.
That concludes the financial.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, school committee section, first, school committee goals. We turn the
Okay,
meeting to our
we
vice
are-
chairperson, Mrs. Caleri.
Thank you. We are deciding whether we have a red, which means we have not yet done anything towards progress on that goal. A yellow means we are making progress toward meeting that goal, or a green, meaning we have met that goal. I'll begin at, I don't have any questions. Okay. I'll begin at compass point 1, teaching and learning. Our first
Are you
goal.
going to share this so we can have a finish?
I got it.
That's the kind of learner I am, so please accommodate.
I have a question.
Yes?
Is there anything else on the agenda?
No.
No.
Oh, can we release Sue?
It's-
Yes,
Yes.
please.
It's way past my bedtime.
Yeah.
Dr.
Oh,
Sullivan,
Dr. Sullivan.
can we release Mrs. Owen?
Yes.
All right,
Release.
all right.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you,
See
Sue.
you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Great. We're making one progress. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for letting me go.
Drive safely. Hi,
Can
Grace.
I
take
need
you
to
with
be
you?
the co-host or
You'll probably still be home before me.
Maybe it's like this.
Okay, you can still be home.
I know.
You will probably still be home before me. Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Right.
Anytime.
Sorry, you should be in focus.
Thank you.
Sorry to be a pain about that. I just truly need to see it.
Totally fine. Okay, here we go.
All right.
Get everyone here, good.
Let's go. Okay, so host 4 student-led project-based learning presentations at committee meetings with an emphasis on cultural competence and inclusion. Definitely a yellow. So
The
we've done
yellow.
2, right?
Yeah.
Include a data-driven student services presentation at 1 meeting per month.
Green.
Yes. You agree?
Or is that yellow because it's still going on?
No, we're regularly doing it, I think.
Yes, okay.
Right?
It's now a permanent part of the
It's on
agenda.
the agenda.
Include 2 presentations from the district technology director, use of technology in classrooms and use of technology in student services and educational inclusion and advancement.
Yeah, we've done 1.
Okay, compass point 2, social and emotional wellness. Host 2 presentations focused on the arts and other extracurricular activities, specifically as it relates to opportunities for participation for all students.
You know, we did at least one.
Fabulous musical. presentation.
That was amazing.
Did that one.
Yellow, that one.
I think
Yeah.
yellow. I think
Yellow.
we've had 2 on the arts.
Maybe we can try for some visual arts.
Visual arts.
Love that.
Each committee member will support at least 1 event celebrating student achievement in the arts.
I mean, I went to the musical.
Yellow,
I mean, I'm pretty sure Mr. Tierney took care of that for all of us.
I know.
I go to every school musical. It doesn't even matter if I was in the town or work at school. I love school musicals. They are, they're so good.
Host a special public
What
forum.
did you put for that, yellow? I mean, have we not all, I have done one. I think I'm next level.
Winter concert at Osgood.
Oh,
Hot
yeah.
take.
okay.
You went,
all right,
you went, you
green.
went.
I think it's great.
Musical?
All right, you're right, you're right. I like.
Your kids weren't in
can't
that one?
No, we had, no, no.
Other ones, past ones.
Okay,
even- Host a
Alice in
special
Wonderland.
public forum / discussion centered on students.
this is a red, but it's
Yes.
because
Glad.
I wanted to make sure that we're getting really good participation and people are still really anxious about in-person stuff. So we're gonna do this in the
Yep.
spring. It's a major thing I wanna do. So it's red, but
Yeah.
it's just because of the timing.
Right,
Can we not do that? All right, what about inviting the school facilities committee to present?
March. It's on the agenda
We
for
did
the
it.
end of
We
March,
did a
right?
meeting.
We'll call that one yellow, because it's on the.
God, it was a school
it's going to
committee
be
meeting that was focused on that, not a
Have
meeting.
review of
It's just a
food
different
service
thing.
options, menu developing, food sourcing. That's a yellow.
That's a yellow, we are working on that at the subcommittee.
Yeah,
And then
a lot of
we'll
good progress.
And that is public, so that counts as
Yeah.
meeting that.
Mobilize finance and facility communities in the whole of the school year.
That's yellow too, right?
That was yours, Mr. Kearney. What do you think?
Yeah.
Y'all are
it's
doing
yellow,
a great
we're
job
doing
on
it.
that.
All right,
We're doing a very yellow job. We're making progress.
All right,
Very
compass
good.
point 4, support and update / redesign of the district website.
that's a red right
Uh-uh,
No.
no.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
we haven't gotten to the
Communications.
communications update yet.
Oh, okay,
That's
all
a
right.
yellow.
All right.
Let's go in.
And I
Go on.
support it.
I was just
Yellow.
I was recently
Yeah, and I.
let down once again by the website, so that's why I was, all right,
I mean, same, but it's a yellow.
okay.
Collaborate with the town leadership to create a community resource guide for use of.
That is also a yellow.
Yellow.
We are working on it.
Really?
Yes.
You guys, nice job.
We're crushing it.
You sure are. Thank you.
Okay, so that is a red.
Similar to the other one.
Yes, just because of time.
Yeah,
We gotta keep these on our radar, but we are doing a great job, everyone.
Not here yet, but it's coming.
Yeah,
Right.
we only have 2 reds. We had, I think, an ambitious set of goals, so great job. Thank you.
Excellent.
thank you.
That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Cleary, for keeping an eye on that.
All
I
right.
think we're on the right track.
Yeah.
And by the way, if we even have like majority of green, it'll be the first time since I've been on this where we've done that. So let's see what happens. All right. School Facilities Committee, we approved well, Mr. Kennedy, do you want to give this or you want, what do you want?
No, I love when you do.
Okay. So there's a,
Me too, Craig.
as you know, we put out to bid, a request for design services for a existing conditions study to be completed for all school buildings in the district. And we had interviews and recently selected AI3, which is the design firm that was utilized most locally in Marshfield
Abington.
for their, Abington. And I mean, many others. There
Yeah,
are
many
several.
others.
But Marshfield, I think, is the closest one to us that had used them.
I think so.
And they have a beautiful, beautiful school. But this again is it's just to make sure everyone, I want to manage everyone's, concerns. No decision has been made to hire an architect to design a new school. This is just an existing conditions study so that they can identify major areas of need or deficiency. So that when we submit a statement of interest to the MSBA's core program, in the event we move in that direction, which we are going to be submitting a statement of interest, we will be able to buttress that application with the information we glean from that study. And that will, we'll be hearing more from the School Facilities Committee themselves on March, I want to say 30th. I don't remember which, I think it's the 30th is our last meeting in March.
Yep.
Okay, that's it from the School Facilities Committee. Anyone else for, just jump right in if you have a subcommittee or a liaison position that you'd like to update on.
So the policy subcommittee just got a draft of the wellness policy, which is very exciting. And we will schedule a meeting to review it
Got it.
and
Exciting.
continue making progress on the binder review. The communication subcommittee has begun work on a survey of sorts, like a kind of informal survey of district staff about what they would like to see in terms of community support as we work toward our goal. And we are working with Lisa Radin on that. We are also working with Lisa on some website updates and specifically on putting a little more meat on the bones. I'm really a big fan of that phrase. Interesting. Some of you here. For the school committee section of the website, we're going to start working with Lisa, and she has been great and very communicative and responsive, and I have not. So
Same as these full
we're
disclosure.
going to get
I
a
need to
meeting
get
on
that
the
to Lisa.
schedule, and we thank Lisa for her continued follow-up.
Yeah, she's
And thank you, Dr. Scollins, for all of your
input.
input and coordination as well. That's it for me.
Okay, Mr. Dial, any updates from any of your subcommittee positions?
Nothing. We had been scheduling a series of meetings prior to the school committee. We didn't have one yesterday. I think it fell off the calendar, but we are still moving forward on the same items. School lunches, we'll add transport and we'll add fitness. Make sure that gets on.
Perfect, thank you, Mr. Dial. Mr. Kearney, any updates from you?
Just to, just say how excited I am that the kids are playing sports. I gotta say that it's nice to see. Lydia, were your kids there?
Allie was playing
Oh,
yesterday. Yeah.
how much fun is
It was
that?
awesome. What he means is the fourth grade girls traveling team played a scrimmage at the halftime of the girls varsity basketball game. And they're practicing with them today, or they did already. I guess it's very late now, but
Yeah.
they did from 4:30.
Yeah, it's actually
That's
tomorrow.
so fun.
Yeah, and
It's actually 2023.
yeah, and like I said,
It's Saturday.
I just wanted to say that I'm just excited to see kids back to action. And, hats off to some of the coaches. I mean, the new basketball coach, he's great. He really engaging with the kids. He came right over to the young kids, and I think that's great. And I'd like to see that with the boys too, the boys that I coach. They're getting better and better, and it's just nice to see. So that's what it is.
Thank you, Mr. Kearney.
Thank you.
Mr. Dial already went.
Yeah.
Mrs. St. On.
My subcommittees overlap with Mrs. O'Leary.
Okay, that was
Yeah.
perhaps my
We are-
favorite update. Mrs. St. On. Dr. Sullivan gave the superintendent eval committee subcommittee report in length today, so we won't be needing one of those. And that, I think, sums it up for the committee and liaison position reports and updates. We don't have any approval minutes to approve tonight. There is, however, a topic not reasonably anticipated within 48 hours. We have a gift from Mr. Paul Kearney,
Yeah.
Which-
That's what we're talking about. I hope.
which is 2 lights for the stairway coming up from the student parking lot at the middle high school. Is there a motion to accept this gift?
So moved.
Motion's been made by Mrs.
Solar
Caleri,
lights.
So-
Solar, yeah.
solar
Second.
lights. So is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Dial. So Mr. Cleary made the motion, Mr. Dial seconded. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? That gift is unanimously accepted. Thank you, Mr. Kearney. Not the first time you've done something like that. Hats off to you, sir.
Thank you. Continue to be a bright light on the.
Oh, Fred.
All right, so there is a reason to move into executive session tonight. Just kidding.
Oh, my God.
We don't have a reason to move into executive session. Is there a motion to adjourn this meeting? Motion's been made by Mr. Cleary, seconded by Mr. Kearney. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Good.
Wow, what a meeting.